to see, first and foremost, St. Louis.
Exactly. I see a lot of people cheering for the players. Go Penguin. Forrest Chen is insane. Keep supporting these players. They're working hard for you guys.
Well, Forrest Chen is really working it right now. H5 should decide this game on the spot, breaking open the black king side even more than it's already open. Forrest Chen. Oh, Queen F3, gunning for the F6 square. And once the F6 square is taken over, you're going to see a checkmate on the H8 square. So Nikola Midtkoff can indeed resign here in good conscience. He's deadlocked. And we're here for the quarterfinals of the Pro Chess League playoffs. I'm Grandmaster Robert Hess here with Women's FIDE Master Alexandra Botez. Alexandra, the games have just started. The action earlier today saw some upsets. I'll bring up the bracket here, but I want to know, what are your thoughts as we head into the second half of the quarterfinals of the Pro Chess League playoffs?
I'm excited. All four of these teams have been performing really well over their ratings, so I think it's going to be a very fun match to watch overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for everyone tuning in now, the bracket shows that the Armenia Eagles tied with the Mumbai Movers, but they had the tiebreaker because they were the #1 seed in the Eastern Division, and the Ljubljana Turtles, upset after upset, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they defeated Maxime Vacher-Lagrave and the Marseille Migraines and moved on to the semifinals. They'll join us the live show. But without further ado, we have the live games underway. So starting with Minnesota versus St. Louis. And I have Forrest Chen with the white pieces up against Mauricio Flores. And Forrest was a hero last week for St. Louis because he defeated Alexander Shabalov, the Grandmaster. When you have a 2100 on the final board, beating a Grandmaster for your opposition, that's a good sign.
Yeah, he's been playing way above his rating, so hopefully today we'll see another few upsets on his part.
Yeah, and in the current position, he has the white pieces here. He just moved his knight back to h3. This knight at some point will find a home on the f4 square. Of course, not immediately. You don't want to blunder this pawn on c4. But strategically, Alexandra, I like white in these setups because black's counterplay, initiating pawn breaks on the king side, will not be possible because a move like g5 is very well guarded, and f4 is never happening with a knight and bishop covering that square. So I think that I'm preferring white's position, though, of course, Mauricio Flores, very strong grandmaster with the black pieces.
Yeah, at least Forrest is getting a start early in the opening, getting a good position. We'll see how he ends up doing as the game starts complicating, as I'm sure Mauricio will do a little later on. Yeah,
and I'll bring up all the other games as well. We have on this board Daniel Gurevich with the white pieces against Gurevich and Cobian. And everyone who follows American chess should know Cobian, very talented grandmaster, many-time member of the U.S. national team, and of course has been in the U.S. championships year after year, performing well. And with the black pieces in this one, he's facing a pretty tame opening. I'll back it up just to get from the beginning. And it's sort of like a London system type setup, and VAR goes for the more aggressive c5 lines. And I don't know about you, Alexandra, but I find these systems to be quite dull from playing with black. I think that you get a slightly worse position, slightly less space, and I generally do not have a lot of fun playing on the black side.
Yeah, it's one of those games that you have to have a lot of patience for. You don't have the center from the start. You're just kind of slowly waiting for a break to happen either on the center or bringing your rooks on the c-file. It takes a certain type of player to enjoy these positions.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And patience is a virtue. And we'll see if Gurevich and Cobian is feeling particularly virtuous tonight. And we'll go over to his teammate because there are two more games in this match. We see Cruel Yaro, Yaroslav Zherbuk with the white pieces against Andrew Tang. This is actually my favorite matchup of the round because Tang says international master. He's officially not a grandmaster yet, despite achieving the title. And Yaroslav Zherbuk has gone 8-0 in Super Saturday, Super Sunday events and has been leading the archbishops throughout the regular season into the playoffs. So what do you think about this position, Alexandra?
Well, I like white's position right now. Obviously, white has a little bit of an advantage in the center so far. White's pieces seem to have a little bit more space so far, although I like black's fianchetto bishop, so we'll see how it does a little later on. I know the chat has a lot of Andrew Tang fans normally. Whenever we're doing commentary, a lot of people like to see Penguin GM live in action.
Yeah, I mean, of course, he has many, many fans. The Minnesota is sort of a fan favorite just as a team because they have John Bartholomew, who's not playing this week, but is still beloved by his fans. Team Scandi hashtag, right? So here in this position, I agree with you that white has the nice spatial advantage. And if black isn't careful, some kind of idea with f4, f5 is coming very quickly just to blast open the king side. And so if you're playing with the black pieces here, you would love to be able to get a move like d5 in. But anytime you make this move d5, you always have to consider the consequences of an en passant and see, well, if we trade queens, I don't like black's chances at all, because for starters, bishop takes e4 wins this pawn on c6, as you have 2 pawns directly under threat. And if you can't trade the queens on e4, well, you're just in trouble, as you'd have to take with the queen on d6, not immediately to lose at least a pawn, but then you're left with these gross-looking pawns over here on the queen side.
Yeah, and what's hard about Andrew's position here is that it's pretty hard to play with this pawn structure early in the opening, and even if he manages to trade off into an endgame, his pawns are still worse off. He has an isolated pawn on a5, double pawns on the c-file. It'll be interesting to see how he tries to get out of this position.
And I don't like what's happening on the clock either, because when white has spent less than 10 seconds in the entire game, and Andrew Tang is trying to spend time every move to come up with resources, and look at this move, immediately played queen h4, spent like, what, 4 seconds, 5, 6 seconds?
Yeah, when something like this happens, you know who's more comfortable in the opening position.
Oh yeah, and with the queen over on h4, it makes this pawn on e5 very difficult to capture, as there's a rook on e1 staring down, in particular, the queen on e6, and as I was mentioning, f4, f5 is coming very quickly, or...
Exactly. And I think this is a very instructive position for some people who are watching and might be newer to chess. As you can see, e5 is only protected by the rook on e1, but there's no way black will ever be able to take because of the f4, then pinning the bishop on the e-file, and the attack Hess just mentioned with f4 and f5 threatening black later on.
Right, when the combination of the ideas with knight e4 to g5 and f4 to f5 is very painful looking. So I think Tang will go into the tank here, and we'll see him spend more time as he can try to figure out and wade through this position. And last but not least, we have Grandmaster Nikola Midtkoff with the white pieces against Grandmaster Vladimir Fedoseev. Fedoseev, the Russian super Grandmaster, is playing at what, like 4 in the morning or something? I don't even know what.
Oh, wow.
It must be something like that in Russia. And he's the black
But
pieces.
I'm sure he's very excited to be here, so it might be late, but we'll see some energy from the Russian chess master.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely has to be happy to be here, especially after a slow start to the Pro Chess League season. He's a seasoned veteran on the Rapid Time Controls, tied for first with Vishwanathan Anand at the World Rapid Championships. But here in this position, what I like about white is that you have this very compact pawn structure on the queen side. Oh, not there, here. It makes it very difficult to attack any of the pawns, right? Because the light square bishop is black's quote-unquote extra bishop, right, the 2 bishops. But 2 bishops advantage, when we want to use that terminology, is good with open space. The bishop on this diagonal, let's say the e6, is staring at a brick wall of a pawn on b3, which leads me to think, well, maybe my bishop wants to fianchetto b6 and bishop b7, but then I have to be worried about knight f5. So by leaving that diagonal, the c8, h3 diagonal, I have to be worried about this knight jump. So I don't know, Alexandra, I'm thinking that it's not as comfortable for black as you would like it to be when you have the 2 bishops advantage.
Yeah, I was surprised. You look at this position for the first second, you see a kind of funky looking pawn structure for white, but the closer you evaluate it, it's hard to figure out what to do with black's bishops, where to develop them. White's knight is going to be really active early in the game, so I'd also like to play white from this position.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really liking what's going on there. And, it remains to be seen how Fedoseev with a massive rating advantage, but he is playing a Grandmaster. And that's what's so nice about this Minnesota lineup. We'll pull up their entire player cards here just to show them in their, bright and shiny photos here. They have such an even lineup. They have a Grandmaster on board 4 in Nikola Midtkoff. They have a Grandmaster on board 1 in Mauricio Flores, and on board 2 in Andrew Tang, and an International Master, Daniel Gurevich, on board 3. And they're lining up directly against the top-heavy team of St. Louis, with Vladimir Fedoseev, Gurevich and Cobian, Yaroslav Zherbuk, who's been a superstar in the Pro Chess League, and National Master Forrest Chen. I'm always rooting for Forrest. I don't know him personally, but I see him fight week in and week out. He's the player
Yeah, he's been playing at over 2,200 rating performance. He's been way outdoing himself, so it's super exciting to see his games.
And that's huge for him, because these teams, in particular, teams like Marseille and teams like Norway, and Marseille got eliminated today, Norway didn't even make the playoffs, they're very reliant on their top boards for points. So if Forrest Chen can score some upsets against this Minnesota squad, well, then they might be in in business. So still
exactly, yeah. And it's good to remind viewers that the average of the 4 players has to be under 2,500. So the strategy they're going for here is trying to get a consistent team. So the fact that their 4th board is playing well over his rating should be very helpful for them.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to make one more comment about this Fedoseev game. I like what Vladimir just did by playing g6 and putting his pawn on f5. He's gaining space, and really he's restricting this knight on g3. And my coach always told me that knights on b3, g3, b6, and g6 are the worst pieces because they often get stuck on those squares, especially as enemy pawns take away their hopping places, right? The e4 square is fully occupied, and so this is a lame knight on g3. But let's head over back.
If Vladimir is listening to your advice, he's opening up the position so that he can actually get some play with his bishop pair here. But maybe Midtkoff has some attack plans here. Do you see any interesting ideas? Okay, f4 was already pushed.
I don't know if I like that for white or for black, because by doing this, even if you capture on e5 and I capture back with my bishop on e5, I have a 3-on-2 on the king side, which I think favors black. And the big deal is that the white pawn structure is a bit compromised. It may be compact, but now you have these double pawns in the c file, which makes it harder to gain a passed pawn. So I think that black should maybe try to trade queens with a move like queen g7, though I am a bit concerned with the lack of development. Let's say we do trade queens, and white makes a simple move like rook a to e1, perhaps. Black's not really super active in this position, and that gives white some. If white's quick, then white can be ahead.
That's true, but if black has time to develop here, he has a better pawn structure for the endgame, and the position will likely open up. He gets to play with the bishop pair, so maybe there's something for trying to get into an endgame quickly.
Yeah, I like this move b6, honestly, because it's using that b7 square for the bishop. Now you don't have to worry about the knight hopping in, and so this bishop is unopposed on a very long diagonal. So I like this game. I think we'll get back to it. Let's hop back over to our buddy Forrest Chen, because you never know when 4 versus 1 matchups, one side just goes down in flames. So right now, at least to me, it looks like Forrest Chen is still hanging in there. What do you think, Alexandra?
I'm still getting to his game. Give me 1 second.
No rush. He's from my perspective, he's still hanging in there quite well. I mean, black is getting ready to push this pawn to g5 in the near future. You have to consider sacrifices on the h4 square, but no, you don't, because the queen just went over to b6, and I'm not sure I love that decision by Flores. Though, what's white going to do about this b pawn is another question.
Yeah, white's. Yeah, so he already has a backwards pawn on b3. He has to make an awkward move, rook a3. You see moves like this when white's playing against a Benoni, and it almost looks like a Benoni type position, except that black has his pawns very overextended on f5 and e4. He has a lot more central control than he would in a Benoni. So I don't know if this idea still works.
Yeah, the extra space for black is very nice. You make a good point that normally in Benoni you're a little bit, your pieces, you have a bishop on the long diagonal in g7, but here you're playing with your pawn. So I think black is in perfect shape with the rooks connected on the E and F files at some point soon, especially if this bishop can move itself from the F7 square, which you might have a difficult time doing with the knight coming to F4. But I was going to say, there are going to be ideas with an eventual F4 from black, just trying to open up the position. So I think Forrest
as much as I like to cheer for the underdog and would like to see Forrest pull this off, I think Mauricio is definitely sitting on a better position here. I agree with you.
Yeah, and this move knight d1 is sort of a sad-looking move, but it makes a lot of sense because it covers the e3 square, which prevents black from playing e3 himself. We can go back just a move here. Black did have the opportunity to shatter the white pawn structure with e3, but the problem is you don't have an attack going, and the g3 pawn may be a little bit weak, and but you're also pawn at f5 is now directly under threat, and this f4 square will be beautiful for the knight. So e3 would have been too soon, and thus knight d1 now is just preventing that from ever happening.
Yeah, it almost seems like white's knights here are just preventing Mauricio's attack instead of being nice active pieces.
Right. I would agree with that. And that's sort of a problem I see often when I play some lower rated players or when I see and analyze these games, is that sometimes they're a little bit too defensive minded. They don't utilize their pieces in a way that is both defending and attacking simultaneously. Sometimes they're a little bit too defensive. Games.
Yeah, of course in a position like this, it's hard to actually find nice attacking moves for white as well. Yeah. He is kind of trying to wiggle his way out of a poor opening here.
Yeah, no, it remains to be seen whether he'll be able to hang on here. He's down 2 minutes on the clock, so he is doing pretty decently with his time management, but we'll see as the game continues. So I'll jump over to this Gurevich versus Cobian game. That's Warmpaka and GM Cobian St. Louis. And, well, we thought it would be boring from the start. Alexandra, you tell me, is this still boring? Because to me it is.
Yeah, it's a pretty even game. They traded off one of their rooks. It looks like they're going to trade off more. White has a little bit more of a center advantage here, but it looks very even so far.
Yeah, no, it's...
The alpaca is, I was going to say hanging on, but the rating difference isn't that bad considering he's playing white.
Yeah, and I think if you're Minnesota, and I believe it is St. Louis with the draw odds, if you're Minnesota, you need to get 8.5 points.
Right.
And so, making a draw versus a high-rated GM, that's all right because you're trying to get 4-0 against Forrest Chen, but at the same time, being a little bit more active, pressuring your opponent a little more would be, to me, a better idea. And here, the reason why I think it's so equal is massive trades can happen along the c file. Let's say rook takes c2, queen takes c2, and a move like queen c8. I mean, white doesn't really want to give up control of the c file, nor does black. Right. And so if they just trade on c8, we're already down to a minor piece ending with no real exploitable weaknesses for either side. So this should just be...
Yeah, if the major pieces get traded off here, I don't see how either of them are going to win the game unless their opponent makes some crazy blunder.
Right. And I guess I maybe slightly prefer black's chances to some extent if you make a move like d5. And the point is I'm taking control over the c4 square, and maybe I can start getting a little more activity. Though I think white is so solid, and there, like I said, no real weaknesses. So I think this game should, with proper play, just peter out into a draw in the near future. So let's go over to our buddy Andrew Tang, playing with the black.
All right, Penguin GM.
Wow, what has happened in this one? Looks like a lot since we saw queen h4. So we started off in a
He
sketch.
finally got that center break we were hoping he would get, and white didn't get their pawn to f4 just yet.
Right, yeah, because coming out of the scotch, you want to get this pawn break. He did get this d5 move in. And for those of you wondering, he could have taken on d6 there, but after queen d6, there are some problems down the d file. Too many bishops there, not enough protection. So instead, after taking, he took on d5, went pawn takes d5, a little trade action, and now knight b5. A nice multi-purpose move, hitting the c7 square, and also allowing yourself to reroute your knight to the center, knight d4. So queen d7, a4, and c6, knight d4, and c5. Interesting.
Okay, so he can just put his knight back on b5 if he wants to.
Yeah, I'm wondering what's happening with his pawn on e5. It's been hanging for several moves now. I mean,
yeah.
Both sides.
Are we worried about bishop takes e5 here or rook takes e5? Maybe after knight b5, that's the problem. He might be hanging the pawn on e5.
Yeah, I think that he's just trying to get control of the e-file. I think that's what Zherbuk's plan is. This rook on a6 is very misplaced. So if you ever take on e5, I can make a move like f4. You drop your bishop, I take, you take, and not only is there problems now on c7, so that's the real issue, is that there's a knight fork. But even if I didn't have this pawn hang on c7, I'm getting control of this entire e-file, and with your rook so poorly placed on a6, your knight on b6 not really doing anything active, white certainly has compensation there.
That's nice. That's a very creative way to be defending the e5 pawn. I wonder if this is some analysis from home that he looked at and he's just comfortable with his e5 pawn where it is.
If he had kept his time advantage, I would agree with you in terms of home analysis. But right now he's the one, Zherbuk that is, with the white pieces down on the clock. He was well ahead at the beginning, blitzing out his moves instantaneously.
Yeah, you're right. He was ahead of Andrew quite a bit, and Andrew managed to play the last couple of moves very quickly. He took his time to think about a plan, but now he's just executing.
Yeah, no, that's very nice to see from Minnesota fans, and I'm not sure. This knight could come back to b5, or it could come to f3, and it's a critical choice in many ways. The knight in f3 does protect this e5 pawn, and also can swing over to g5, which obviously has ideas.
He just played knight f3.
Okay, so he played knight f3, and I think that's the better choice. And he spent how many minutes is that? Like 5 minutes and 7 seconds on this move? Maybe that's wrong, but
oh yeah, 5 minutes and 7 seconds. You're right.
Wow,
that's a long time.
I think it's a critical choice, and if it is a classical time control, you'd really be considering: do I plant my knight on b5 where it can't be kicked, or do I come to f3 where I both defend the e5 square and threaten knight g5 mating attack ideas as well? So if you're black, c4 is always an option here, right? Alexandra, you have to consider breaking that pawn chain on the queen side and attacking the a4
I mean, because black needs to have some sort of counterplay here too. Obviously, right now he managed to break open into the center a little bit, but he still doesn't have an attack or something going on just yet. So I like c4 and trying to get a pass pawn, and maybe once the bishop diagonal opens up, there we go. He played c4.
Okay, so he's listening to us. And so knight g5, I don't think quite works, because knight g5, h6 has to be played. You just bring your knight back, and I don't even know if black is too unhappy if you can just take this pawn on b3, because you may take h6, but if you just check in a line like this out, if your queen takes a4, for example, I've gotten all your queenside pawns. And unless this white attack is coming very quickly with ideas maybe like bishop f4 followed by knight g5 or something like that, black is the one ahead with his pawn already coming to b2. You know, very risky sort of decision making for white if you're going to just try to go all out for
I mean, the position I see on your analysis board right now, I definitely prefer black.
I think white's a little too far away from checkmate to be able to give up all the queenside pawns like that. So bishop h6 was played, which is a better starting move than what I was suggesting, because what you're trying to do is now play like a move like knight g5, where this pawn on h7 can't be pushed either to h6 or h5. And if you're able to play, let's say take on b3, and let's be precise here. So knight g5. So if bishop takes e5, this is, I don't see the mate. And you have to be mating, otherwise you're giving away lots and lots and lots of
Bishop
material.
f8 doesn't work.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go as well. But I also thought that black can just play
like
h5.
a good square at first, but then he can just take.
Yeah, this is weird. Maybe knight takes
What
h7.
about bishop g7?
Maybe knight takes h7 is the idea. You're using some sort of discovery on the h7 square and hoping that, if king takes, I go bishop f4 check, and I take this bishop, and I'm still threatening checkmate. So that's an option, but it's getting, quite, you need to be quite precise from white's point of view. This better work out, otherwise you're just much worse, as this pawn is not too far away from promotion square.
Right. So I guess we'll figure out if his attack works out. Otherwise, Tang managed to get out of the complicated opening position.
Yeah, and so he went knight g5.
Knight G5,
we'll be right back here, Alexandra. But Midtkoff, speaking of attacks going on, he just made this move knight to h5. And he's trying to blast open Fedoseyev's king here. Of course, the immediate threat is knight f6 check. But wow, I think it does no worse than draw. That's the first thing that should be said. Because if g takes h5, queen g5 check, and the king is nowhere safe to go. I mean, if you try to play for a win with king f7, you simply are going to lose this game, as I have this bishop h6 check, and most importantly, I remove all the defense from your rook on e8. Right? That seems relatively straightforward. Taking on h5, you can't bring your king towards the center where checks are more powerful. But if you bring your king to h8, I see no more than a draw after queen f6 check, king g8, and just repeat. So you can go this way, and I'll just repeat back like this, and you'll repeat by king h8, king g8, queen f6.
But this seems like it's black's best option here.
I agree, because between knight f6 check and rook takes e8, distracting the queen, and the queen g7 checkmate, there's no way to stop both of those threats. And if that's the case, then you're kind of forcing your opponent into a draw. And so what he did was, I guess black, saw h4 and maybe h5 coming, and this bishop on b7 was excellent piece, but it's not really threatening checkmate with that rook on e2. So rook e8 did make logical sense, but knight h5 was a really nice response, forcing a draw with proper play. So
right. Queen g5. Okay, yeah, we're gonna see him play out the draw here.
Yeah, what a find by Midtkoff. He's a grandmaster. You can't undersell that point, but Fedoseev, of course, is favored. He's nearly 300 rating points higher. Yeah. But this is a big half point, I believe, for the Blizzard, because all of their players are 24, 50 plus after this. And with that being the case, there are no free points, and that's a draw agreed.
But the St. Louis is the one who wins if they get 8-8, right?
Absolutely. So
so that's a small detail to keep in mind. It's still too early for it to really matter.
Right. But, and I think the difference is like everyone wants to draw the top 3 for St. Louis and then beat up on Forrest Chen. Like that's the name you have to keep listening to.
Oh, Forrest, they're feeding him to the sharks. That's what's happening here, and he's just trying to fight his way out, carry the team.
You know, poor Forrest. He's that just in general that name. You have Forrest Gump, and the whole movie's struggling, and then here you have Forrest Chen. The whole season he's struggling, but he is playing pretty well, and he beat Alexandra Shabalov last week. So I switched over to the Gurevich Cobian game, and it still looks. I mean,
Warm Paka. That's a pretty funny username.
Yeah.
Picture as well. He's probably trying to troll his opponents just a little bit, maybe distract them.
Yeah, and here, I mean, the position still, I would say, is approximately level.
White is a little better here.
Yeah, and maybe the pawn e5 is either an asset or a liability. It's not going to be just a neutral pawn, because right now the queen on b8 is already directly threatening that square. And making a move, okay, he traded on c8, but I was going to say making an eventual move like f4 opens up the dark squares, and this knight on d5 is sitting pretty.
Right.
You know, at the same time, bishop d2, I mean, there are no infiltration squares. So what is black really doing here?
Yeah, maybe white's pawn is overextended here. There isn't an obvious way to defend other than with his pieces instead of his pawns, which is not ideal, obviously, because then they'll be tied to protecting the pawn. Oh, f4, he does it anyway.
Yep. So in certain endgames, the move g5, I would definitely not play that right now with your king, with the queen still on the board and your king being exposed. But the idea behind g5 is natural to try to chip away at this f4 square and thus put pressure on the e5 square. So for now, I think white is doing all right, but I could see this going south for Gurevich in just a few moves. But we have to go over to our buddy Forrest Chen. He has 6 seconds left.
Oh my gosh.
And his position is very interesting. So he doesn't have enough time to calculate all the options. He's probably getting checkmated soon, or not. I mean, maybe I spoke too soon. This knight on g2 is a very good defensive piece, covering the h4 square. And
okay, he forced Mauricio to go back now, but he'll just be able to double his rooks on the f-file. White's f-pawn looks very weak here, and if it drops, then he'll probably won't have enough pieces surrounding his king.
Yeah, he has to play a move like f4 at some point, but I think he's defending very accurately for the time being. The queen on e3 is nice, and look at this rook on a2. Don't count that piece out. It may come to the e2 or f2 square, and ideally, you get this silly knight away from g2, and you double your rooks on the g-file, and then all of a sudden it's black who has to deal with a pawn on g7. So
what happens after queen h5? There it's played.
Not good. Not good, Forrest. Okay, he played f4, probably a move too late. He should have went f4 a move ago. That way he could get his queen over to g3 to defend. Now
he has less than 4 seconds here. It's so hard to figure out how not to drop any of your pawns with so little time. But hurry.
You just mix the words together.
Funny. Yeah, I mixed them a little bit. Reminds me of run, Forrest, run.
Exactly. I think he should have won queen h3 there. I think he had a better opportunity to make a draw had he tried to trade queens. Because now the queen and bishop combination are very dangerous. I would start with a move like bishop to f5, perhaps, or just play rook e7 and throw my bishop in on e4. And with the queen being on the board, I think actually hurts white's chances more than it helps. So the rook e7 followed by bishop e4 looks quite powerful in this position. Because, yeah, I mean, what's white going to do about it? In fact, I mean, rook e7, I don't know where you put your queen. Maybe h3? So he went b5, causing confusion.
Okay, he's trying to trade off.
Just note that you couldn't go queen g3 a move ago. That would have been a big blunder as I allowed bishop e4 check, and now the king can't stay protecting the queen on g3. You'd have to block with your rook. So queen h3, good move.
This was a good move.
But
he managed to miss that blunder.
I'm calculating queen takes queen, king takes queen, pawn takes c4, pawn takes c4, and then bishop d3. And at the end of this, the bishop attacks both rook and pawn on c4. You can't protect pawn on c4 and pawn on f4.
Right.
Too much is hanging.
He could, yeah. I was about to suggest rook g1 for a second, but then the bishop can still take on c4.
Right.
It's kind of the end of his defense there. But
Yeah.
Black decided not to trade queens, which is interesting. Maybe he sees something better, some sort of attack we may not have commented on just yet.
I think what he sees is the time situation. And Forrest Chen with 6 seconds is not going to be able to hold. But, I mean, queen g3 was a good start. Just a couple moves away from king h2, rook g1 ideas and applying pressure right back on the opponent. I guess black can win a pawn by taking on c4 and then playing queen e4 check, or in this order. So pawn will be won for rook f5. Even better.
Yeah.
Look at this defense. Let's go, Forrest. Rook g2.
It is impressive defense. It's sad that it probably won't be enough, but that doesn't take anything away from his hard fighting spirit here.
Yeah, just rook takes f4 is just great for black. I mean, you get a free pawn. Your queen protects the bishop on g6. So I would take this in a heartbeat. But, you know, it's unfortunate, but it looks like Forrest is going down. So there's still some other games in this round. I don't know. Let's go to the Tang versus Zherbuk game.
Yeah, the Tang. This game switches evaluations, at least at first glance, every time we come back to it.
I mean, if white's not checkmating, black is winning, because this rook on a6 has somehow come in very handy as the knight. That knight that was on b6, and the last couple moves just went swinging over to the king side, and bishop g7. What was, I mean, that's either move of the week or blunder, because it looks like after knight takes g6, I don't see any checkmates coming. He's going to have to take on f7, but if he takes on f7, you have these two minor pieces of rook, and then this
there's just too many pieces playing against the queen.
Not there. It's just queen takes f7 here. It's totally winning for black. So we're talking about Zherbuk.
That was incredible. What a comeback. Down on time, difficult opening position, but he managed to pull off a very incredible win.
Yeah, now it's very easy for black. You just take on f7, lose your queen for the rook. Okay, or not. So he's going to put his rook on f6 instead. Look at this. Rook f6. Game over.
Yeah, nice, very nicely done by Andrew.
Back rank checkmates if you take my rook, and if you don't take my
GM
rook.
fans in the chat, you guys should definitely have some hype right now. We want to see you guys getting excited.
Now, that's a huge win. That's a monstrous win with the black pieces, and that's final. A win by Grandmaster Andrew Tang, puts them ahead.
Oh, wow. The Cobian game, Gurevich has less than 5 seconds left.
I told you, all of a sudden, black was going to turn the tables, and here, what looked like an equal position now just looks very nice for a Cobian. Look at this queen and bishop lining up in the g1 square. This bishop on c1 is a dud. The pawn on f4 just restricts it in its entirety. And, okay, it might already just be winning in position, but if you look at the clock as well, Alexandra, I don't think that Mr. Gurevich is particularly pleased to see that he only has
I agree with you here.
4.8 seconds.
That was really nice how Cobian was able to convert a very drawish looking position into this nice attack. I guess the key pivotal moment was the fact that white had the weak pawn on e5, right? And then he just opened up his king side maybe too soon.
Yeah, now all of a sudden black is winning a queen because king g4 only move. Okay, he flagged, but what I was going to say is king g4 takes
here. It actually says he won by resignation. So
yeah, it's checkmate
lost
also.
all around.
Just an immediate checkmate. So a win for a Cobian, a win for Tang, and we have actually the other match underway as well, the Chengdu Pandas versus the Australia Kangaroos. So I'll bring all those games up as well, just finding them in under the binoculars. And so I'm going to bring up their player cards. So Chengdu is led by Yu Yangyi, super grandmaster. His official rating, I believe, is 2760. Then you have Nihua, who is a very strong grandmaster in his own right, 2675 or thereabout. Then Zhu Zhangyu, who has been playing very well all season as board 3 for Chengdu. And then Ruotong Chu leads them on board 4, and she's been just absolutely great. I believe in her first week of the season, she went 2.5 out of 4. But not to be underestimated are the Australia Kangaroos. Alexei Sarana, Anton Smirnov, Timur Koibakarov, and Brandon Clark. And Brandon Clark is the Aussie Blitz champion, I believe. He's a little bit underrated. He went 8-0 in the Super Saturday or Super Sunday.
Yeah, Brandon Clark is performing over 2,500.
Over 2,500.
46. No, he's not to be underestimated here.
Wow, are you serious? And his official rating is like 2,300. So he's
exactly. So that's insane. He's performing as well as some GMs in the Pro Chess League.
I mean, he's performing better than I would, so I'm proud of him. And that's just with the white pieces against Yu Yangyi, he's set up a very normal position here. He's done everything you could ask for on the white side of this sort of Philidor defense. And what Yu Yangyi has done is put his bishop on e6, offering some exchanges. I think white's doing just fine. Just capture on e6, play in the center, eventually move your rook over to d1. The one thing that White has to keep under control is that this a4 pawn potentially can become a weakness rather than a strength. But for the meantime, I think Brandon Clark is doing just fine.
Yep.
And
his flag is from England, although it says he's a local player, so I'm guessing he must have grew up in Australia or something like that.
Or maybe he studies there. I really don't know how old he is or what his deal is, but he clearly has a large affiliation to...
Yeah, he's young talent, for sure.
And he just took on e6 with the knight, so he kept his bishop on a2. I like that decision because you have an unopposed bishop. You're also really preventing black from ever breaking free with d5 anytime soon. From black's point of view, your knight e6 immediately attacks the bishop on g5, but if the bishop retreats, let's say to e3, you can go bishop hunting with knight g4 and immediately get that bishop off the board, which to me it seems quite logical. Black just has a little bit less space, and it's a little unpleasant for the moment, so playing a move like knight g4 will just get this bishop off, and then you can play bishop f6 and ideas like that to get out of what is currently a bit of a bind.
Yeah, and does bishop h4 not work here? Because black can just take on e4, maybe?
At first glance, it looks like it might. I'm just a little bit concerned about what happens. Oh, yeah. Wait, but
so I'm curious if he could try to keep his bishop pair here.
Yeah, I think you can take on e7, and if you take on d2, bishop takes d8, you take back on d8, but your knight on d2 might be trapped over here. So I think just rook e to d1 at the end of this snags the knight. Right. So it's close. Close call that definitely deserves consideration and will work if white's not careful. So bishop h4, yeah, you can keep the bishop pair. If I maybe queen b6 though, and just
you have to be careful to see if there's any intermissos in that kind of position. So, but he has been thinking quite a bit here.
Right.
So just play bishop h4.
So your move. He's listening to you.
I hope he calculated it better than I just glanced over right now.
No, but your intuition serves you well. Playing bishop h4, keeping the bishop pair. And if your bishop can come to g3 and rook to d1, for example, of course you're pressurizing these two central squares, both d6 and e6. One bishop hitting e6, maybe this other bishop hitting d6.
So black didn't even go for knight takes e4. Didn't work, I'm assuming. He just played queen b6 here.
To me, it looks like a decent position for black. So I know some players are scared to give the two bishops, but if you can kind of unleash and unravel your pieces, you should be decently content.
Right. And I'm guessing black wants to bring his a rook to d8 later on, so it makes sense to play something like queen b6, putting some pressure on white and also helping his pieces develop a bit faster.
Yeah, rook d8, of course, makes sense now.
Oh my gosh, there are so many jokes in chat about the Australians and the word mate. I mean, of course, it's chess in Australia. So keep them coming, you guys.
Well, I'll keep an eye on the mate jokes in the thread as well. And yeah, I mean, with Brandon Clark, you have to watch out. Really have to watch out. He's clearly a good board four for them. So who else do we have here? We have Anton Smirnov with the black pieces playing against Zhu Xiangyu. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, but I'm trying my best. Let's see, two bishops for black.
As long as you say it with confidence, it sounds good.
I just want to be respectful and pronounce the names correctly, of course. But here with the black pieces, Smirnov, two bishops, more pawns in the center. White, on the other hand, has an extra pawn on the queen side, right? Just one for black, two for white. But I love bishops. You love bishops?
Yeah. I mean, knight d4 won't be able to last because e5 is coming so quickly. Playing this type of position with a bishop pair is a lot more fun than trying to find some coordination between a knight and a bishop. It's a lot more awkward.
For sure. And what's also awkward is that this king on g1 has a much more difficult time entering the fray, whereas this king can just run to d6 right away. Just king e7, d6, play e5, as you mentioned, and where's exactly is white going with his pieces.
Yeah.
So far, so good.
Black's king is going to be active a lot faster than white's here.
Yeah, king e7 now. Why not? What's his bishop doing on b5? I guess maybe it's some lines knight d4 and trying to put something on c6, but as I mentioned, king just runs very quickly to d6, and then I start pushing my pawns. Don't rush. That's the key here for black is, okay, bishop b6 is perfectly reasonable, and this bishop is cutting off both knight squares.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm really liking black's position here. So let's see how...
You're like salivating. You're looking at this position. I really am. Like it a lot.
I really, really am. So I'm going to switch over to Timur versus Nihua. And speaking of bishops, Timur has the bishop pair, but I mean, maybe also a good position with the bishop pair.
Oh, we're seeing a lot of good positions for the bishop pair this round.
I don't know. I think that having an unopposed piece is always very nice. The big problem with bishops, of course, is that in certain endgames, when the bishop can only stay on one color and the knight can hop from color to color, it becomes difficult to protect all your pawns. But with rooks on the board, as white has this rook on e1, rook and bishop can team up together extremely well, as the bishop has much more scope than a knight. So I'm feeling white's position here. I think Timur is
right.
a
Do you
bit
think
ahead.
Nihua should try and go and get a pass pawn himself? Maybe trade off the H or the G pawn? Or do you think he should just try and hold the position while white tries to advance?
Yeah, I mean, making pawn moves on the king side is definitely a viable option. Sometimes there's an issue of pushing them too far, because what the good news about these pawns is they restrict the bishop on g3, right? The bishop can't go to h or f4. And bishop g4 is a decent attempt, though...
He's trying to trade off. Whites can easily play bishop g2.
White can, yes, retreat bishop g2. I think if bishop g2, maybe the idea is to play knight h5 and get this pesky bishop, as the rook always is f2 square if it runs away. So he is getting one of the bishops off the board. That's the good news for black. The bad news, from my perspective here, is that enough to claim equality? For example, let's say I just do what you want to take your bishop on g4. This bishop on g3 covers the f2 square. This pawn is passed. Okay, not running too quickly, but actually maybe
you're trying to just run with the pawns here?
I'll run with the pawns, then run with my king as well.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, the kings are just the MVPs in these endgames.
Yep. And a king on e4, that's a pretty sweet square for that one.
It definitely is.
And also this knight is sort of trapped too. Like this knight is, you can play h5, your idea, but the knight, at least for the time being, would be a bit stuck. So bishop g2, so now knight h5 I expect to be played, and there it is. And I think that all of a sudden...
Bishop d6 almost looks good, and then just pushing e5.
Right, but you got to watch out for this rook f2 check, right? Unfortunately,
right.
Bishop d6 playing e5, e6 would be very, very quick, if not for this one annoying check. So king e3. Okay, so what Timur's trying to say is, if you take me, now I cover this f4 square, and your rook has nowhere to go along this f file. It's a dead file. Meanwhile, perhaps white can eventually use the h file, and more importantly, e5 will come, rook c1 will come, there goes your c pawn. So keeping the bishop on the board, the light square bishop, has its perks.
That's nice, and what I like about that position after knight takes g3, h takes g3, is that white has all of the squares covered on the open f file, so he can switch his rook between a semi-open file and the f file later on. Right,
especially if black is forced to defend. Rook c1 followed by e5. If this rook comes to c8, then the rook can swing to the entire open file in f1. And if you notice black's position, these squares are not well defended, whereas white has everything covered. So h5 is a good move, trying to go h4, h3. I still believe in e5. e5, rook c1. I mean, just blast open the position. For example, e5. Playing h4 feels slow. I take you, you take me back, and I play rook c1. And now how are you going to protect this pawn on c6? If you
yeah, he might have to play his bishop back to d7.
And that can always be met by d5, for example, taking with the bishop on d5, giving my bishop more length, more scope, and then e6 will be protected as well. So it's looking a bit scary for Nihua. And h5.
Nihua should probably not push h4 right away.
Yeah, he might need to be a bit careful before playing that, because after h4, and he didn't, bishop
e6. Yeah, that's what he's trying to do here. He realizes he's kind of in trouble, so he's trying to hold back white's pawns. He's holding down the fort here.
Yeah, and actually this bishop d5 idea is quite interesting, because you trade off the bishops, and then this black king will just try to run to d7. And if the king gets to d7, then that white pawn is sort of stuck in its tracks. Rook h1's good. I think rook h8 is necessary to keep that pawn defended.
And then white can even play rook f1.
Oh, that's actually a great time for it. I was a little bit nervous, but rook f1 is great. You're just putting your rook to f6.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, you have to always calculate who's winning this race. If I go rook f6 and then black goes bishop d5. And, it remains to be seen, because he did go rook h8. And Maybe bishop f3 is a second option as well, just to try to attack that pawn, create another weakness or another placement for this white king.
After bishop f3, he would probably play h4.
Right, I was going to take it on h4.
Yeah, he takes back.
And
but then white's king is a lot closer, so maybe he'll be able to come put some pressure on the h pawn.
Right, that's in the ideal world, that's what happens, but at the same time, black can just push the pawn to h3 and keep it well guarded as well. So tough endgame here. So let's see how the teammates are doing, just so we don't miss any kind of instructive or decisive games, because of course everyone is a key member of the team in this Australia versus Chengdu matchup. Should we see how... We haven't seen Chu Ruotong, so I'll check out
let's look at her game.
Yeah, she's with white against Alexei Sarana, and she has a superior pawn structure, but the bishop on e2 to me doesn't have the greatest future. It's not bad, but it's kind of just stuck for the time being.
I mean, black's rook on a8 is kind of weird too, although it's very easy to fix after king b7. It's just weird to look at this position and wonder how that happened.
Yeah, and I think from white's point of view, you don't mind giving up this f2 pawn. So if you play the move knight d2 and bring the knight to c4, you don't really care about this pawn. And the reason why is because black's extra pawn will be one of these doubled pawns, which can't create a passer. So it's not the end of the world. Though why move the knight? You can just keep your knight here for the time being and maybe play bishop d3, king e3, king e2, or something like that. Not out of the question.
Yeah, and Chu Ruotong has been playing pretty well too. She's been playing over 100 points better than her rating, performing, I mean.
Wow. So she's...
That being said, it's still hard to play a 2500 Russian GM, you know?
Yeah, you know, I mean, she's playing a strong, you know, he's playing for Australia, but he's Russian Grandmaster Alexei Sarana. He's young too, so you never know what their true strength is. I mean, just really a strong player. He's having a good year. He's been leading them on the top board at 25-40. So.
Yeah, he was a great choice for a free agent. I wonder if they knew him ahead of time, but anyway, good pick for them.
Yep, and speaking of good picks, Brandon Clark with the white pieces against Yu Yangyi. If you look
I love looking at Brandon Clark's games.
You know, he gives
underdogs so much fun, especially when they're playing so well.
Exactly, he gives the underdogs hope. And here, what he's saying is, I might go down a pawn with this pawn on b2 hanging, but I have opposite colored bishops. Activity. Oop, that's square. So if you trade, let's say, and take this pawn, my rook is coming right into the d7 square, and hopefully my activity is enough to salvage a half point. That said,
that's why black might consider rook d2 here.
Right. That's a great choice. So you can move either rook, but let's say the d rook to d2, and you're forced to trade on the d file. And even if sometimes you get this b3 protected pawn, if this black king can somehow enter, which it can't, unfortunately, because the rook on e1 is cutting it off, then the black king can just run over to the queen side and create some problems. This rook on d2 does a great job cutting off the white king.
But Yu Yangyi just let him come to d7.
Yep.
So he's not worried. He's saying that, okay, do whatever you want on the 7th file. I'm just going to come push my double pass pawns.
Yeah, and this is a big problem for white here is that you don't have enough defense when these pass pawns start rolling. For example, rook a7 trying to come behind the a pawn. Probably black can just play this move b4 and rook takes a5. You play b3. And you have a check on b1 followed by pawn to b2. And that is a nice protected pass pawn on the 7th rank. And then my rook moves away and I'm always threatening the queen. So that doesn't look very nice for Mr. Clark. So he went rook a7 now. And a big difference is he has bishop d7 check, scooping up c6 in many of these lines.
Right.
So interesting choice.
But even if he scoops up c6, he's still going to have to figure out how to stop the b pawn from just continuing and walking over to b1 eventually.
I think it's easier in this variation though. For example, b4 check. You know, you can pick which. I don't think the side matters necessarily at the moment.
Too much.
But let's say b3 happens, the rook comes to b7, and the rook sits behind this pawn. And what's good is, let's say rook b1, king g2, b2. So you got your protected pawn in the 7th rank, but now bishop e4. And how are you going to kick my bishop off this diagonal is it's a great question. And if I win your h-pawn as well, I'm starting to take all your pawns.
But after you play bishop e4, can't I just play rook rook c1. I guess b1 is protected.
Yeah.
So that is a problem. You're right.
So maybe go after the a pawn with rook a1, just attacking this.
Yeah, just try to get the other pawn and start promoting the a pawn as well.
Yeah, that's not fun.
That
nice.
also sounds like a scary plan because black's bishop on f6 is it's always going to be protected by the g pawn, and he'll just continue pushing.
Right. So I went bishop d4 first. Interesting. So it's trying to stop these bishop d7 check ideas. So I like that. I really like that idea. So now after rook takes a5, I think his plan is just to go b4 here.
b4, right. I mean, why would he take on a4?
Right.
I don't see what else he can do here.
Yeah, because giving a check on b1 and putting the rook behind the pawn will allow white to then go rook a6, attacking the c6. So here we did go b4. I like that move bishop d4 a lot. It's a classy move by Yu Yangyi, because importantly, covering the 7th rank now, and his bishop and rook team up very well to start pushing this b pawn.
Yeah.
And look at this, b3. My bishop covers the b6 square. So now rook c2, there it is. Wow, this is instructive technique. You can't capture on c2, because this pawn cannot be stopped from queening.
Right.
And if you rook c8.
Right, he's trying to, after rook takes c8, bishop takes c8, white is trying to get his bishop on f5 soon.
Right. But king
but
e7.
Of course, black's not going to allow for that.
Still fighting. I like this.
He does have the fighting spirit. Everybody has observed that.
So the question is, how quick is this black king? For example, if I take on c8 and then start running my king over to the b pawn, is my king quick? Oop, not rook c3. Touch that square by accident. But if the king can start running, is it quick enough to support this pawn and win the bishop? I don't know. And what I really don't like, Alexandra, is if you look at the black pawn on h7 and the queening square on h1 and look at the bishop on d4, they don't match. And that always scares me about bishop endings. If the rooks get traded and then we have to get into, even if I lose my bishop, it might not be winning for black. So rook a2. Oh, look at the clock. He's at the flag. 3 seconds left.
3 seconds. He's living on the edge, Hess.
Yeah, he's living on the edge, and I don't think he's going to be able to stay up there because b2, bishop h7. Like that move. So he's taking the pawn, keeping the scope of the bishop. So
should black just take on a4 here?
Then maybe the king gets out. The king g2. Play that. Okay, rook b7 check. We'll play king g2.
Okay. Okay, so he did take on a4, king g2.
This is great
black's
defense.
Bringing in his king. Yep.
This is amazing defense right now because he's saying that my bishop will forever be covering this b1 square, and I don't mind in some variations having. Ooh, nice again. Bishop
but
b4.
what black has to do here is he has to get his king on c1, right?
Yeah, and that's the problem with getting your king to c1 is one, it's a very difficult journey, but two, even if you get your king there and I have to sacrifice my bishop for the pawn, white just starts pushing the pawns himself over there on the king side. So I do not think black is even close to winning this game. And in fact, if black is not careful, those white pawns can start rolling down the board.
Oh, it'd be crazy to see white getting a better position here.
Yeah, we had a draw in the game of Nikwa and Timur Koibakarov, so that's a good result for Timur with the white pieces. He drew a player 200 points above him. But
wow, great job.
Yeah, this Australia team is really tough.
They're playing so well.
Yeah, and I mean, this whole match is so tight right now. I'm looking, I'm scrolling over the games. We're going to stay here for a little bit, but I'll come back in 1 second. I just want to show the Chu Ruotong game. She's defending very accurately with the white pieces. Alexei Serrano has absolutely nothing to speak of with black here. Opposite colored bishops, rook and bishop apiece. And I think this game should fizzle out soon. And in fact, maybe black needs to be careful as this rook might come for this a5 pawn. Although then you give up the f file. And
if black gets too crazy and tries to force, he might actually end up being in more trouble here.
Right. So it looks like Brandon Clark.
You see that happen sometimes with higher rated players who don't want to accept a draw.
Right. And I'm just really scrolling back and forth quite quickly because the time control issues, but I mean, Brandon Clark seems to be hanging on here. So unless he flags or really just gets himself so low on time that he can't hold, he should be able to make a draw because right now he's doing everything right, putting that king on f5, putting the pawn on g4, g5, trade off that last black pawn. What is that move? Rook takes c3 would be a blunder. He was hoping for tricks. But Brandon Clark will not be fooled. Play rook b7 or king.
He's playing very well.
So
we're not surprised here.
Bishop e1. Ooh, bishop e1 is very powerful. He missed it.
Bishop e1, he didn't want rook takes b2?
Well, bishop e1, I'll just show very quickly because they're in time show. Rook takes g3 check. The king only has h4. You move your rook to b3 with check, and you win the white rook after rook b3 check. So that was a missed opportunity to try to go after the g3 pawn. Instead, we have, wow, way too much going on here. Some checks.
That would have been really difficult to make sure it works.
Wait, he just blundered a full rook, and he missed it. Rook b3 ran right into bishop f6 check, picking up the rook on b3. So both players are missing these opportunities.
I was looking at your analysis board. It happened so fast, I didn't even see it.
Yeah, no, they're just moving so quickly, and that's a tremendous amount of blunders right now. Oh, this is unbelievable.
It's okay. Everybody blunders in bullet. You guys can all feel better now about those queens you hang.
Yeah,
at least I do.
I mean, Yu Yang has plenty of time, though. 15 seconds is more than enough to see a simple check. And right now he brings his king in, but where's his king going? It's stuck from this bishop on g6. Yeah. And I'm still looking at these other games here. It looks like Chu Ruotong, everything went wrong for her, and she just got mated. She resigned, but she was getting mated. Somehow...
Wait, what happened?
I'm going to scroll back really quickly. It looks like her king got in trouble. Her king got in trouble. She lost the bishop, and then with that, she lost the game. But let's go back. Oop, that game was a draw. Brandon Clark still holding on for dear life. We haven't looked at Anton Smirnov's game in a while, and I will do that just because they deserve some look too. And Anton Smirnov with the black pieces is down a pawn.
And it was a draw. Nicely done, Brandon Clark.
Wow, so they did end up in a draw here. I mean, how did they miss the rook hanging? That's what I want to know. But we'll stick on...
It was a battle of the blunders, and...
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, the battle of the blunders. I like that.
Exactly.
You know, wow, just unbelievable. So, just unreal that they couldn't find that.
Yeah, 2750. But again, everybody's human. We hold them on these huge expectations, the pedestal, but it's so hard with fast time control. It's understandable.
Yeah, you know, we all make mistakes. Of course, nobody's perfect, unless your name is perfect.
You live and you learn it. You know, Hannah Montana. I won't do that again.
Oh boy, oh boy. I'm about to kick you off this stream here. So.
Oh, I know you secretly like the song. It's okay.
No, I really don't. But here, okay, look, black has everything under control. The problem for white is you have an extra pawn, but the extra pawn is one of these doubled ones, and you don't have any coordinated like pawns together. If you could get something like a pawn on the f file, or a pawn that's farther away from the e file, because right now this bishop on e5 is a brick wall. So I think if anything, black is the one.
White can somehow figure out how to trade his knight for the dark squared bishop. But even then, you're right, he can't do anything. Yeah,
so the king can just run back to e7 at any moment. Okay, this is just a draw now. Opposite colored bishops, draw, agreed. So that match went 2.5, 1.5 in favor of Australia, right? Australia with the win because Chu Ruotong blundered and lost to Alexei Serrana. So we'll keep an eye on that match, 2.5, 1.5 in favor of the Aussies. But we do have the games between Minnesota and St. Louis well underway.
All right, let's go look at some of those games.
And where to start? So many good-looking games. Let's start with Fedoseev. Fedoseev is kind of the big dog in this match, and here he has the white pieces against Daniel Gurevich. And
we already missed most of the opening here, but
you know the opening. People can scroll back and look at the opening. It seems like it was a Caro-Kann, and the key to this position right now is that white has more space and a superior knight. The knight on c6 prevents black from putting a rook on d8, which is an open file, and also similarly prevents black from putting a rook on c8 because then knight e7 check happens, right? Anytime you move this rook to c8, you have to see the fork that happens on e7. So f5 cements this knight on e4, but very importantly gives this rook the f7 square to play from.
Right.
I don't know why. In b4, of course, just push pawns, play b6, play b7, and you have control over the b8 square. So maybe black's not even in time to stop this idea. What I was thinking, Alexandra, is rook f to d1 instead of pawn to b4. So put this rook on d1. Try to put your rook on d7.
That's exactly what he's doing. And this is precisely how Fedoseev has to play this kind of endgame. Obviously, he has the e3 pawn, which is isolated and could create some problems for a less experienced player, but he's just so active here.
Yeah, and key words there, less experienced player. Fedoseev, very experienced, very strong.
Very experienced, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this position is just so uncomfortable because if you go rook f7, which is a natural move trying to stop the pawns, take control of the 7th rank, you do have to be careful about knight d8 ideas as well. And after rook e7, this rook can also come to c6 and put pressure on both e6 and a6 as well. So it's not looking particularly fun for the player with the black pieces here. So still a big fight ahead because the knight if this knight, for example, runs to d5 very quickly, there's some chances to get back into the game. And so he did go rook f7. And I think knight d8. Okay, knight a5. Safer square, right? You prevent this pawn from moving, not that it wants to move, but also allow your rooks into the c6 square regardless. So I really like white's position. Very, very nice. And the big problem is, from black's point of view, a3 defends this pawn. You're not going to have an easy time defending that one.
Right. Yeah, it looks like he's playing this right out of an endgame manual. The Russian schoolboy style.
The Fedoseev manual to superior endings. And
yeah, exactly.
How about, speaking of strong players, I guess we weren't really speaking of strong players, but I'll just pretend like we were. Mauricio Flores with the white pieces against Yaroslav Zherbuk. And Zherbuk went down in flames against Andrew Tang in that first one, but here with the black pieces, he's very active.
He wants to recover this round for sure.
And what do you think? Is his activity enough for a legitimate advantage for the black pieces against Mauricio Flores?
It's not clear to me just yet because, white has his pawns pushed pretty far out on the king side. I don't think that he has an attack just yet, but maybe something like knight d4, trading off the knights, bringing the queen to d4. His bishop looks a little awkward on h6. Flores might have some sort of attack here later.
Right, and the first instinct is to play g5 and say your bishop actually on h6 is trapped right away.
Yeah.
The difficulty with that move is I'm somewhat glad to take on g5 if it means that I'm really getting this attack on your king. And the problem is this g2 bishop is pinned. If you move your king away, let's say to h2, there are ideas with knight d3, forking bishop on b2, rook on f2, and this is a vicious attack. So I don't think that white is going to be very happy to play a move g5 when it, quote unquote, wins a piece for 2 pawns, but really gives black a clear initiative over there on the king side.
Yeah, maybe he won't play it yet, but it's something he'll keep in the toolbox later on. I mean, if the position changes a bit, then it starts becoming a threat, and it's not obvious where black can shift his bishop around to avoid that later.
Right, because g6 is not a move you want to play from black, because as soon as you move that pawn, the f6 square becomes vulnerable. So knight g3, okay, looks reasonable. I mean,
this was a very reasonable move in this position. Crazy things could have happened, but no, just knight g3, just improving my position slowly.
And very importantly, white is closing the g file, so now g5 is a much more legitimate threat, as there's no pin on the bishop on g2, and the white king can simply go to h2 as well. So queen h4, trying to get super active. A move like king h2 is always possible, just protecting this knight, and now you have to worry about your c7 square as well. So everything is sort of hanging in the position.
Yeah, I really like white's position here.
Yeah, Flores. I mean, my first instinct was look at that activity from the point of view of Zherbuk, but this bishop on h6 is just a lousy piece, and it's
because at first you don't notice that bishop, and then you start looking a little closer at it, and you see the issues.
Yeah, so unfortunately for him, his bishop is not very happy, and thus I don't really like his position at all, as you said. You made some great points.
Maybe we should check out somebody else. See.
Okay, let's check out a Cobian and Midtkoff.
Yeah.
Whoa, what is going on here? I don't think I've ever seen better control of the light squares than Midtkoff is doing right now.
Yes.
Wow. So I'm just going to scroll back to about move 8, move 7 to see how this happens.
Cobian is being pressed hard here. I feel like he's going to suffocate if he doesn't figure out a way to
it's funny.
Get some air.
I was talking to one of my students about this position just earlier today, like this exact position, and how if you're not careful from white's point of view, black can get some quick counterplay. And exactly what happened in this one. Look at this move, c4 on move 13, an intermezzo saying you can take my pawn on d5, and you can go pawn hunting. Perhaps going pawn hunting in another game is something to be tested by taking on e6 and then on f7, but instead retreating with the bishop. But look at these light squares. They're just... they're appetizing, and just black's plays come so naturally.
Yeah.
This is strategically lost for white. I don't feel particularly brave to make a point like that. The knight Now we could take on d2, which black absolutely should do, is trade the knight, plant this other knight on b3, or go after the a6 pawn with queen b5. But the point at large is if you take on d2, plant a knight on to b3, then, look at this. All the control over the light squares, e4, d3, b3. The rook can go to e8 if you need to ever do anything in the e file. Then black plays f5 and swings the rook to g6, for instance. I mean, just...
Yeah. And he could even play on the queen side. He could even go for something like b5 and collect the a6 pawn later on.
That's a great point.
I mean, black has all of the options. That's the issue here.
Yeah, this is terrible for Cobian. So Midtkoff, maybe he's the hidden treasure on board 4 that Minnesota needs. We know we have a lot of John Bartholomew, and I'm a big Sean Nagel fan. Like, I've been a Nagel fan since day one. He went 4-0 early in the year. But right now, Midtkoff is doing the work on holding down the fort on board 4. So
good for him, doing the work. Let's maybe check out somebody else here who has a less clear position.
Oh my, let's go to Andrew Tang versus Forrest Chen. We haven't been here. But look at
Forrest, go!
Actually,
I like both the players.
Be careful, be careful. There are a lot of Tang fans in there.
Forrest is just a fun name.
Forrest is a fun name. He's the underdog, and we do root for the underdogs here. But Alexandra, look at this position. Black is up in exchange, has 7 pawns to white's 6. And all the rest of the pawns are weak too. His pawn a6 can be captured next move.
I mean, is he not just completely winning?
He is. I'm gonna do a little bit of instant replay. Let's scroll back. It was a London system type of deal by Tang, and let's see how Forrest Chen masterfully handled this opening. Okay, it looks better for white after the opening.
I'm gonna see your analysis board. Let's see the opening recap you're at.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through the moves. I'm already on. Scrolling through move 15 and a5. So it looks like white got space, got 2 bishops, but black was quick to play e5 in the center. And quickly Forrest, whoa. Oh, look at that, e5, but winning material because the move bishop g4 comes hitting the bishop on d6 on move 19. And and e4 traps, well actually e4 didn't trap the bishop, so maybe bishop c5, but then the problem is you get e4 and then bishop g4, and all of a sudden your king is being broken open. So that was just a nice move by Forrest Chen. If whoever evaluates move of the week and game of the week in Pro Chess League
this is one to look at for sure.
I mean, let's go, Forrest. Look at you. Your queen is beautiful. Next move, rook b2. Take that c2 pawn. Oh my gosh. Andrew Tang is going down.
Yeah, this is GG.
Andrew Tang, who had a great win against Yaroslav Zherbuk to put the Minnesota Blizzard ahead, he's in a bit of trouble here. So I'm concerned about his position. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's a strong player. He can fight. But right now, it might be past fighting stage.
Yeah, you can't. It's hard to come up with any sort of counterattack plan here, even if you're hoping black might blunder. That's when you know it's just totally lost.
Yeah, and I just put the odds before the match. It said Minnesota 15% chance of winning, and that's because after all the simulations with St. Louis having the draw odds and also Chengdu with the draw odds and much higher rating averages, they were the favorites. But here, it's anything but Andrew Tang's day, and Minnesota, unfortunately, it looks like after e4, rook b2, you're losing the c2 pawn, and this is all that, well, anyone wrote. It's just dead. So let's see what else is going on in these other games, because I don't even, it pains me to see Tang's position at this point.
Yeah. Oh, back at the Mauricio Flores game in Jurabuk,
whoa,
g5 was played. His bishop is somewhere in the corner.
Okay, yeah, so let's see how this action unfolded. What is going on? So you're going to win the bishop, but this... Wait, no it's not. I was going to say this rook's coming to e3, but I guess that's the point of knight b4, is distracting this knight away from the d5 square. Because if you take on b4, the idea is to play rook e3, but is this even enough?
Yeah, this is a great distraction type tactic.
But I'm not convinced by it, Alexandra, and part of the reason why is, okay, you have threats of a check on g3, but what after if like a queen d5 check? Like what in the world are you aiming for? I see if king h8...
Oh, so you're saying white can just take the knight and no problem. I guess he did just take the knight. I
mean, just take it. Why
queen
not?
d5.
So queen d5 is a check. Checks are useful. You can also...
Checks feel good.
If you're feeling ultra defensive, You could play, okay, queen d5 check, and this is just winning. So I think Zherbuk, who has been the GOAT as in the greatest of all time, is turning into the GOAT, like the scapegoat here. He's the one who's being slaughtered by the Blizzard.
He's being sacrificed here. A ritual is happening, and it is not in his favor.
Lamb. No, this is terrible. So let's see. If you take this bishop on h6, or am I actually worried about a check on the g3 square?
On g3, right.
I don't think so.
But after you block on g2...
Right.
Oh, maybe rook e1 after.
Yeah, I'll just take you and play rook f1 myself.
Yeah.
The problem is you're 2 pieces down, so even if somehow you win 1 piece back, that's about it. No, this is...
Right.
This is dunzo. No, Mauricio Flores is okay. He's a capable grandmaster. No worries whatsoever. Up 2 minutes in the clock. Zherbuk is going down. So let's see how the other boards are going. So what is... No! What are you doing, Forrest? How did your king get on h6 and you're losing your a pawn? You're still completely winning, so I'm not too worried about you.
He's still going to win.
Well,
it looks like he's going to be able to checkmate white soon.
Wait a second. Queen f7 check. Exact check, but queen f7. Now I have queen f8 check with a draw, and you can't block me because if you go f5, I give you a check. If you block with your queen, you lose your rook on c5. No, Forrest! Bad Forrest.
Oh, gosh.
So he went f5.
Wait, after queen f8, he can play king h7, right?
And then queen e7 check. You just keep your queen attacking this rook on c5.
Oh, right. You can just keep attacking his rook. And there's no way to get out of it, is there?
No, Forrest.
King g8 afterwards?
Forrest. Come on, Forrest.
And I said there was no way.
Well, king g2. Is Tang playing for a win? Yes, he is. He's playing for a win, which means he's going to lose. Queen g7. Beautiful now. Now your queen protects the king, it protects a7, and now this rook can play on the c3 or c2, and then you can push your pawns. I mean, this is a terrible decision by Tang. I understand you're playing a low-rated opponent, but as you've seen how this game has unfolded, Tang has been anything but the better player in this one. So now black can take this a6 pawn if you leave it.
Definitely. There is no way he missed that perpetual. He must be playing for the win here, which is just crazy. What is he hoping for?
Fans will call that doing the Kramnik. And by the way, Mauricio Flores did win his game. So he beats Yaroslav Zherbuk, which is a great win for Minnesota. And Minnesota needs Tang not to go down to Forrest Chen. But right after this move c5, what are you doing? Right? You can play your queen somewhere, but then black goes d4, d3, or c4, c3. I mean, you have multiple pawns that are very passed. This is...
Yeah, I totally agree. Maybe he'll be able to trick Forrest into another perpetual later. That's probably what he should be hoping for at this point.
Yeah, this is bad. No, Forrest has 11 seconds left, so he needs to move quickly. I want to switch over to the Fedoseev game, which is over, and white won by checkmate. We didn't check this out in a long time. We said it was much better for white, and the game ended quite quickly since we last looked. And what Fedoseev did is he brought his rooks into the game, and it looks like he really didn't get that much going for him, but what Gurevich did was allow his move g4 to happen, and the point is you can't take with his pawn on g4, you lose your knight, and after rook to b7, g takes, you can't take back with a pawn, which is what you really want to do as it's pinned to the king. So simple protection, and the king on f5 is misplaced, but still black was doing okay until this moment over here. As we continue, knight e5 check, starts scooping up pawns, and now the king is left undefended. And not only is every piece on the board hanging, but rook g8 was checkmated.
Yeah, Gurevich was just defending that endgame the entire time.
And yeah, I switch over to Midtkoff, who is up in exchange, but how many pawns? So
yeah, last time we checked, Midtkoff was winning.
And now I'm checking, and
much worse for Cobian. What's going on here?
Well, now it looks...
Cobian has passed pawns.
Looks great for Cobian. It went from terrible.
They're both in time pressure.
Yeah, Cobian does not have a lot of time, but these pawns are quite passed. I mean, this pawn can start rolling too, the e pawn.
Well, that was a change of events.
No, this is terrible for black. It's losing. I mean, queen c4 check, last move was probably even stronger, but okay, just go
e5, yeah, get those three pass pawns.
Yeah, that's not fun. Can't stop them all.
Not at all.
And this is over in a second. So I'm keeping an eye on Mr. Chen. Forrest Chen's up a full rook now, by the way.
Okay.
So I'm going to go there because
pulling through.
Actually, let's let this game end out because Midtkoff is about to lose on time. And now d7, this pawn can... No, wrong square. There's bishop c7 stuff. Okay, now he's up a full piece. We'll go back to Forrest. Run, Forrest. You're up a rook and a pawn and 2 pawns. Let's go, buddy. Oh, look at him. He's just blitzing it out now. Who's the GM now? Huh?
Forrest is a future GM.
Yeah, exactly. We can't give him the title yet.
People are surprised that he didn't go for the draw. Of course, they're surprised.
I just think it's terrible in a team event to do that to your team because you need the wins. Yeah, you need every half point matters. And yes, you need to get 8.5 because of the tie breaks, but to sacrifice essentially a half point here, just instead of owning up to it, you're a GM, sure, but you played at 2100 and you couldn't win, that happens. But instead of being so, essentially full of yourself, right? Like you're letting your title precede your play. And by doing that, you're saying, I should beat this guy because I'm higher rated. No. If your position is better, you should win. And if my students are listening, listen closely.
Life lessons by Hess. Take notes, ladies and gentlemen.
I always tell my students that just because your opponent's higher rated does not mean that they're better. Their rating is an indication of their past performance. Doesn't mean in this one particular game they'll play better than you.
And Tang played until he promoted 2 queens. Come on.
Let's go, Forrest. That's my guy. So let's get over to the Chengdu versus Australia match because they're well underway in their second game. This is how it's going to be, Alexandra. We're going to be seeing the end of one match and then going right...
And then hopping to the other one.
And I accidentally clicked on Amon Hamilton's game because somehow his game is here where I don't see the fourth...
The chess bros are trying to sneak back into the quarterfinals.
Yeah, how is...
I just clicked his game accidentally too. Okay.
Yeah, where's the fourth game from this match? Is it over? I don't see it. Who's the fourth player here? It's Chu Ruotong. I don't see her game, so let me try to find that. And just to remind everybody who these players are, I'll bring up the Chengdu. We have these 4 players, the incredibly talented board 1, in particular Yu Gangyi, Chess Panda 123. He really loves that Chengdu Panda mascot. And then you have these other players, Ruotong, Nihua, Zhu Xiangyu. And for Australia, you have... Sarana, Smirnov, Koi Bakarov, and Brandon Clark. So it's a good mix, right? It's a great mix of players. And what is happening with Chu Ruotong? I still can't find that game. So do they finish? Is that game done? It looks like it's done by the scoreboard. So it looks like she lost.
She lost that quickly.
So I'll try to find that game here. Just if that game's over, we might as well start with it.
Right. Look at what happened, and then we'll come back to the live games.
Yeah, but I'm still not finding it, so bad me. Whatever. We'll start with...
Then let's just focus on the games we have right now.
Yeah, we'll find it later. So right now, Yu Gangyi with the white pieces. He's playing Timur Koibakarov. Koibakarov with the black piece. This rating is incorrect. 2202 must be his Chess.com rating because he's an international master at 2490. He's very talented.
Maybe he's not as strong as at Bullet, but then you look how well he's been playing, and you know that's not true.
Yeah. And so Ruotong did lose. That's official.
Okay.
So that's not good.
Yeah, Timur has been playing over 2,500 in performance rating. So this rating is very deceiving, you guys. Don't be fooled.
Yeah. No, I mean, come on. But Timur has been playing well. I picked him in my fantasy chess team pretty much all season. So, yeah. But at this particular moment with the black pieces, I really like... do not like his position with the black pieces. I really like white's position. Note that black is not castled. There's still a bishop in the way. The superiority...
Black's not castled. His pieces are pretty awkward. He'll have to play something like knight f5 to maybe trade off the bishop on d4.
Right. And I'm always concerned about the move b5 coming into play, right? When you have this knight on c6 and there's pressure along the a file, I'm always considering this move b5, breaking open the queen side, gaining more space for white. So knight f5 is not a bad move. You can also take on d4 first, potentially.
Right. This is starting to look like a French, even though they started with a Caro-Can.
Yeah, it's a French with a good bishop.
Of course, the light-squared bishop is outside of the pawn, so that's the main difference here.
Right. And I think thematically, bishop h5 is also an idea. So you're getting rid of this previously... This bishop was on a good diagonal, but wasn't doing anything. Now you can take a knight, which protects the central bishop on d4. So bishop h5 would be a decent looking move. Instead, he takes on d4 and plays
I
knight f5.
actually like knight f4 here. That makes sense to me. He's trying to get the knight out of the center because if he takes back on d4, then white's pawns on the b file aren't looking as good as they could.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, in general, this idea of by moving the knight from c6, trading on d4, means you don't have to worry as much about the move b5. So I like that decision, but the knight might come to b5, right? Because the a-pawn is pinned.
Right. Knight b5, nice move. I think. What happens after rook c8, I guess, is the question.
Rook
he just
c8?
repositions his knight to d4.
Yeah, you put
one knight off and brought this guy back in.
Yeah,
it's like bringing in the player who was benched out during the game. Like, come take his spot.
And then b5 comes in, right, with full force because the rook is removed from the protection of the a6 pawn. So this is looking nice for Chess Panda, which is Yu Yang Yi. I love that username. He's very proud of his team.
Of course. He even has a panda as his picture. The team logo wasn't enough for him.
Right. So knight b5. Okay, so we'll get back to this game. We'll see over here between Zhu Zhongyu and Alexei Sarana and what is going on here. White has a lot more space. That's Sarana. This bishop on h5 is doing well to pin this knight on g6. This bishop on c7 is doing well to help white control the c-file. And so the last move was knight takes f4. And if black plays knight takes f4, you're not actually going to take on e8, I don't think. Because if you take on e8, knight e2 check, you move this king somewhere, let's say to f1. Then there's knight takes c3. Oh, wait, are you doing this? Bishop takes... No, because you have too many pieces under attack, and black is currently up one. So that wouldn't work out in black's favor. So that would work out.
He could just take with his pawn and try and bring his rook to g3 later on.
Exactly, that's what I was about to say. So after knight takes f4, he went e takes f4. He keeps the material balance. Rook g3 is coming. If the king goes to the h-file, king f2, rook h1 is coming with checkmate, right? So it's not clear how you're going to save your rook and save your king, because rook e7 is the only move on the board to save this rook. But rook g3 check, king, let's say, to h8, and there's always these ideas with king f2, rook h1. I would probably pick king f2 before the check on g3, just to save it up.
Wait, bishop d6?
Oh, yes, of course.
He's just... Oh, it looks like he's
so
almost winning.
Oh, he's winning. Rook g3 check.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, after bishop takes f7, king takes f7, he can even play rook c7, right?
Yeah, lots of options. Oh, that rook c7 ideas are good, but rook g3 check, removing the king from the, I take here, you take here, and there's always going to be, I'm up a full exchange. So that's a great play by Sarana, who continues to impress.
Yes, he does.
So let's see how our buddy Brandon Clark is doing against Nihua. So Brandon Clark with the black pieces. I just pulled the game up. He's down a pawn. Somehow his h-pawn is missing.
Yeah, it's not there, but he has some. I wanted to say he has some counterplay, but then I was looking a little bit deeper, and it's not clear at all if he can.
Yeah, you need that h-pawn.
Tricky.
Actually, ideally, you put a black pawn on f6 because that's a great square for it to clog up some of the holes. But now with the queen coming to e5, as he just played, this knight can always go to f4 to trade. This knight on g7. A fianchetto knight is not what you want to see. Knight d4 now for white.
Definitely not.
Yep, knight d4 played. White's dominating. Better queen, better knight, up a pawn. Good night. This is just all Nihua in this position. A 20.
Nihua, good for him.
Yeah, 2675 Grandmaster. He's not going to blow this one. I see better not because his team needs his points.
Right. Because their board 4 already lost.
And they're down 3.5, 1.5.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, Sarana looks like he's winning. Maybe we can go back to the Yang Yi game.
The Yang Yi, okay. Let's go there. Whoa, opposite colored bishops. But big weakness, humongous weakness.
Oh yeah, d5, just a beautiful target for white.
Yeah, it's juicy, isn't it? Just, I mean,
Oh, yes.
you know, king e6. King e6 is natural, let's say.
Of course.
Like rook d1.
Rook d1, yeah, also a natural move.
I mean, bishop f3 next. If you go rook d8, I go bishop f3. This doesn't look so fun. The problem is
Right, because he can just can he? No, even if he doubles his rooks on the d file and tries to push something like c4 later, black's rooks won't be pinned. So it's not like d5 is hanging automatically, but
yeah,
it will be a weakness.
Yeah, I want to play this move rook a5, and the idea is that I go b5, just start make one pawn trade on that side of the board and create some more problems for black. So rook hd8, rook fd1. So he's going to go king e6, I assume. Maybe king c7 is like a to try to ditch the pawn by going pawn d4, but that doesn't look ideal.
That looks pretty risky here.
Yeah, king c7. The problem is, if you want to ditch your pawn, you're going to win this pawn on b4 back, but after d5, look how strong these pawns are in the center. It's just a terrible decision.
Oh, he did play king c7.
Oh boy, it's not good when I'm predicting moves that I'm saying are bad, and he plays them. Because bishop f3 here, what are you going to do?
I mean, he's just gonna let white take the pawn.
Okay, bishop f3.
Or king c6. That looks terrible.
No,
c4.
Yes.
Yeah, I called it terrible before you did.
No, this is just maybe you were getting in trouble regardless of your king position. So maybe a move like f6, just giving up the d5 pawn and trying to take away one of the white central pawns. But still, I don't believe in that. f6, you can just take a free pawn. If I don't mind having an isolated pawn in the e file if it's a pass pawn. So
right.
No, this is great for Yu Yang. Very, very good position.
Maybe he can try rook d7 and rook a d8, try to get the open file at least as compensation.
Yeah.
But also c4 is coming later on, so that doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah.
And we're trying to find something for black here, but there might just not be something for black. Yeah, he's playing rook d7, but it still doesn't look good.
Right. Sorry, just answering a question. I'm checking out the chat as well.
Of course.
See a lot of familiar faces. Chess Education, Chess Bay 94, Ben Feingold, Grandmaster Feingold, who's a regular commentator for the Pro Chess League.
Chess Bay with the best emoji of all time.
What was it? I didn't see it.
The Chess Bay with the heart.
Oh, yeah, of course. Sorry, I thought there was a new one there that I was missing out on. But lots of familiar faces, lots of friendly faces. Thank you, everyone who's tuning in. And we have over 6,000 people watching here. So the pressure's on now, if it wasn't already, Alexandra.
Right. Hi, Tommy, Shelby, and Muffrancher. Good to see you guys in the chat. We'll go back to some of the games now as well.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so this game I really like white. Just take a pawn on d5. Maybe what Timur is hoping with the black pieces is if you take on d5, and I get to try to trade all the rooks in the d file, but this is what I was about to say, Yu Yang is too quick for me, is white doesn't want to trade all rooks necessarily, but just one pair is probably good enough. And
c4 is, I guess he would lose b4, so maybe that's not necessarily a good move.
Yeah, but in the future, it's definitely an idea. So here, what white can do is take on d5. You can't exploit this pin in any way, shape, or form. So what white can do is then just bring the king towards the center and then decide when to trade the bishops, the rooks, excuse me, if this happens. And not to mention, if this king comes to e2, now f7 is hanging on the spot. So so it takes, bishop takes, exactly.
Yep, this is what we predicted. And the other games are almost clearly winning. The positions are almost decided. So this one is actually one of the more interesting positions. Okay,
well, if that's true, then we'll get back to this one in a second. We'll see the games that are almost done.
Yeah, let's take a look at those to remind people where they're at.
I wouldn't say this one's almost done because it's going to take a while in the Serrano versus Zhu Zhongyu game. It's going to take a while for Serrano to prove that he can win a position like this. The nice thing about black's position is you have not a fortress, but you have a fortified setup with this pawn on f6, bishop on e5, doing well to defend one another. Now, you can take on this pawn on b5 at any moment. So what Serrano is trying to do, since there is a 50 move rule in chess of when you move your pawns or a capture, he was trying to delay his capture of that pawn. Now he still doesn't have to take it because there's no way to defend it twice, but he will eventually take this pawn. But black has a pretty ideal defensive setup with this structure on f6 and e5. I don't know if white's going to have the ability to crash through here.
That's a good point, I guess. I remembered Sarana being up in exchange, and I just assumed that he was going to have an easy win, but no such thing as an easy win at this rating.
No, I mean, of course not. And he's playing a strong grandmaster with the black pieces.
Right.
And it's just so difficult because this configuration on f6 and e5 is never moving. And what white needs to do is use his g-pawn somehow. But look what black's doing. Bishop g4, put it back on f5. And there's not enough room on the g file for white's perspective because when you go rook g7 check, my king will always kick your rook via h6. So it's not looking... I'm not too optimistic about white's winning chances, but considering it's...
I mean, I guess what could let him swindle a win here is if there's some sort of tactic or Sisfang position. Because he is trying to do some behind the king checks here. Unfortunately, yeah, none of them seem to work.
Right. Yes, you know, is what's happening, right? The king's on h6. The rook has not enough space along the g file, so the king can just keep going from h6 to g5. If you give me a check on the g file, I can always swing to the h file and push your rook away. So somehow white needs to set up a position where he can get a move like g4 in and then maybe take over the 5th rank. But that could be important, where he swings his rook, let's say, to b7 and over to b5. That actually is a winning attempt, a very good one. Is if this rook,
b7 and b5, yep.
If this rook can get to the 5th rank, but now the bishop is back on e5, I mean, just how do you get rid of this nice bishop-pawn configuration? You can't. Ugh. It's really annoying.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating to try and push this as white.
Yeah.
Bishop f4. Yeah, black's just barely moving his bishops around his king. He's just holding all of the important squares here.
Right.
He's just playing very stable.
Yeah, this one will last a while longer. Let's look at Nihua versus Brandon Clark, because that one we thought, at least I thought, that Brandon Clark was going down quite quickly, and in the current position, yeah, he's losing on time, he's losing in position. He might get checkmate in a few moves. This knight comes to g5 with great power. Oy. So don't blunder. Queen takes f7 check looks like a good move, because after queen takes f7, you want to play knight g5, but you can't do it because it's pinned to the king on f2. So don't make any silly mistake like that. You can make a move like king to g2, for example. You can play pawn to h4. Any simple move wins. Any fancy move like that could just lose. Also, the c6 pawn is hanging right now, by the way. So queen takes c6 is...
I mean, can you just play knight h4 here?
That looks good as well. Knight h4, you have to play like knight h8. Ugh.
Yeah, something very bizarre.
Yeah, all these moves win. So Brandon Clark is going down very shortly. That leaves us with the Panda, Yu Yangyi, and see if he can pull off this win here, as Timur Koibakarov is fighting very well with the black pieces. But a5, I like that, trying to get a better square for the bishop. But what I hate is, I mean, Alexandra, look at these f-pawns.
I couldn't avoid them if I wanted to, Hess.
Yeah, you know, it's like, I wonder if I'm white, if somehow I can get my king over to h4 and h5 and just run my king that way. So rook d4.
Yeah. It was incredible. I mean, Timur realized that he was going to have a much worse endgame. He decided to give up a pawn just to have slightly more active pieces, and now we're going to see if he's able to hold it and how good that choice was.
Great decision by black, though, to play b5 and just keep the pin going, put this king on b6 where it's forever out of checks, because what the rook needs to do is escape this pin somehow. But it's not going to be able to escape it when you don't have a check on another file. So what's going on here? If you move the rook, now I take on b4. If you move the bishop, I trade rooks, and I probably have a fortress set up here. Because
h4, h5. Okay, so the g6 pawn maybe could be weak in the future. Not yet, for sure.
Yeah, you're right. The g6
but
square,
I mean,
and then
must be what he's trying.
Rook d6, good move. I like how Timur is not doing anything. And by the way, Nihua won his game, so that game is officially over. But I like how Timur is not trying anything. He's just saying, I have a fortress here, and you're not going to be able to beat me. Now, the one thing I'm very concerned about is if the move bishop b3 is played. So bishop b3, we trade. Let's say bishop takes b4. There's always ideas with bishop c2 and taking this pawn off the board. And once I get the f-pawn, maybe my king has some squares on the king side.
Normally, opposite color bishop endgames tend to be very drawish. But the fact, if he could somehow get his king on f5 and there's some sort of break into position, that would be a great exception to the general trend.
Yeah, and I don't think he's in time because the black king will run backwards as well. The black king will just run to d8. The bishop will defend from the back by putting it to d2, for example. So where's king going? Rook c8 check, and then just go rook right back to d8.
Where is king going? That's a good question.
I mean, it's going nowhere.
He's just trying to trick him because they're both low on time. At least that's my...
So I would have went rook d3, but okay. I mean, it doesn't matter, really.
Right.
The problem is this king can't defend the bishop. That's what you really need to do, and you can't do it. No, this is a draw. So Timur doing well on the clock as well because...
Yeah. Yu Yangyi is probably...
Wait, why do you do that?
He might try to trade off rooks, at least give it a final go.
Well, rook a1 check is now a possibility, but the problem is, in fact, you lose your e-pawn, which you can't afford, is if you try to... Right. Oh, rook takes e6.
Okay, there we go. So he did try and see if he could trade off rooks.
No, black's better now. I mean, he gave up his e-pawn, and...
You think he blundered, maybe?
I think he thought that his opponent would take the rook and just make a draw. Now, right. Black has some bishop d6. Play bishop d6. There it is. Watch out. The tables have certainly turned right now. Oh boy. King d2 is met by bishop takes b4 check. So here's first a check. Play rook d1 now. Rook d4 is coming. Uh-oh. Here's a take on b4 and take on f4. Actually play rook c4 check. No, don't trade rooks. The winning attempt is to keep... It's a draw now, but he had to keep the rooks on the board. If he kept the rooks on the board, he had really good winning chances.
Yeah, you got excited for a second there.
Well, he really had a good...
Oh, he's still trying. Bishop e6 and trying to bring his king to g6, but it doesn't matter here.
No, it's a draw. There's no way white can lose this. There's no way black can lose this. This just moved like this forever. Bishop g8, bishop c4, bishop... Okay, this is now even clearer.
Right.
So he missed his one opportunity, and they should agree on a draw. Maybe
why are they playing?
They're going to repeat and then agree. But then as soon as they agree on a draw, which they will by repetition,
right?
This is hilarious. They're just wasting our time. I just want them to finish so I can stop it, both of you. Oh, this is annoying.
We could just hop over to Serrano's game.
Yeah, when they finish, I'll go back to the point that I wanted to make. But
I mean, these are very riveting moves, Hess. So if you want to continue to see it through, I understand.
No, I went over to the Serrano game because it looks like if anything, black made progress because his pawn went to f4, so it's essentially getting the same setup as before. When the pawn was on f6, bishop e5, now it's gonna be pawn f4, bishop on e3, and once this setup occurs, I mean. Now f3 is the next move from black, if you let me, to force a draw.
Right.
So go f3. Oh, f3 maybe white's going to go g4. And
I still don't see any winning ideas for white here.
Me neither. Okay, maybe black can also play bishop f2 next. Yeah, bishop f2.
Okay.
Do it. Do bishop f2.
And then force a draw.
Yeah, I'm going to take this. If the bishop was not an f3, could have went rook a8. Okay, now bishop takes g2. No. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, we're...
Okay, now bishop takes g2.
Maybe there's a more accurate way to finish off this game, but it's not going to change the result here.
Yeah, he's trying to keep a little fortress, but now here comes rook g8, king f2. So what's the deal?
Okay, the thing...
Literally nothing has changed here.
Black's still shuffling his bishop's closest king as he was earlier in the game. Making some progress.
Yep. And as I pull back the screen of the scoreboard up, we see that St. Louis up 4.5, 3.5, and they're in the middle of their third round of the match. And Chengdu is down 2.5 to 3.5 to Australia. So the Aussies, full of upset magic. They're the underdog for sure.
The Ljubljana Turtles of this match.
The Ljubljana Turtles, absolutely. And I'll pull up the bracket as this game is not very riveting, as you pointed out. But the Ljubljana Turtles upset the Marseille Migraines, 9.5, 6.5. And the Armenia Eagles tied with Mumbai, but they have the tiebreaker as the 1 seed, 8-8. And here we have on the right side of the screen, Minnesota and St. Louis, and Australia and Chengdu. That's where we are currently in this matchup. So Okay, this pawn was lost, and this is a draw. So this is what you should know. You can just go here because rook on h8 check, and bishop. You can't stop the bishop from being a good defensive piece, and these squares. So, okay, don't flag. He almost flagged. Yeah, so bishop h2, and king f2 is stalemate because there's no legal moves. And now just play bishop g1. Just don't stop doing this.
I don't think he's going to stop. I think they must know this endgame.
Yeah, this is kind of trivial. This is the same thing because it's the king on the back rank versus on the flank.
Right.
Yeah, this is just easy. I got to give a shout out to my good friend Will Bartlett, who suffers from migraines, and he said, "Migraines, can I get a trigger warning before you announce that team name?"
Aww.
So, Will,
I suffer from migraines too, actually, so I feel him.
Yeah, so I've got to give my guy a shout out there.
Yeah.
But okay, this game is pretty dull, so I'm going to open up the other games. We can come back here if something indeed happens. But the St. Louis match versus Minnesota is well into the third round here.
All right, maybe we should take a look at that then.
Yeah.
And I see you already pulled it up.
Yeah,
awesome.
You know, I love looking at paint dry, but in this case, I think I'm going to move on.
Yeah, I think we've spent enough time. We've done our job there.
Yeah, for sure. Watch the player with the rook win in that game now that we moved on, but so be it.
Yeah, that would be crazy. We'll keep it on a sideboard. We'll take a quick peek.
So Forrest Chen got the main man. His game is up. I don't like his position at all. I think I should say that again. I really, 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 really hate his position because white is going to go queen h6, is going to go knight g5, and is going to deliver a checkmate. Now, if that doesn't happen, white is going to play rook f to c1, put a rook on c7, and dominate on the 7th rank. And for good measure, if that doesn't happen, white has the opportunity at some point of playing pawn to e6 and just shattering the black kingside structure.
Wow, so, you just completely shattered black's position here.
And there goes e6. I mean, look at this development, right? You can't. It's hard to play when you haven't developed your pieces on that side of the board.
Yeah, he's missing 2 pieces here. We're not sure when he's going to get them back into the game.
I don't love Gurevich's decision to play e6.
Pretty open. You don't like e6. You like rook c1 better, right?
Well, you can start with rook b3, for example, and that way when e6 comes, the pawn on b7 is always under attack. So, you know, you gain a kind of a tempo, I should say. But maybe queen c7 and you're still fighting.
Right.
E6 is good. You know, can't complain about it. This knight's going to come to g5 and attack it. And so, for example,
queen can come to e5 and then rook c7 later.
Yeah, this is bad. I mean, the knight covers f7, it covers e6, rook c7 check is coming, just terrible. You can't play chess without 2 pieces.
Another life lesson by Robert Hess.
Oh, f6, that hurts. Ben Feingold is definitely watching and is going to say never play f6. I'm going to go over to the Twitch chat just to check what's happening there because I'm waiting for Ben Feingold with the never play f6 line.
I mean, he's not wrong. He does a lot of funny comments, but that's one that is fair in this position.
Yeah, not one you'd like to see from, if you're a fan of, yep, there are people who say Jay-Z Yoshi saying never play f6, and a lot of people are, they're on the bandwagon for Grandmaster Feingold. So I hate this position. I'm going to move to a different game.
Yeah, let's look somewhere else. I'm
going to go back to that game with rook and bishop just to show everyone where I move 144 and nothing has changed. They're still moving around. Should be an easy draw. So hopefully they draw that game soon. But let's check out a Cobian and Flores because Flores had that crushing win over Yaroslav Zherbuk. And a Cobian is a very strong.
Cobian has a lot more space this time than he did in the previous game when we thought he was just completely cramped up and in a much worse position.
And then he beat Midtkoff, so what do we know?
Yeah, he still managed to pull it off, so, we'll give credit where it's due, but this is nicer.
Yeah, I see 2 main things in the position. One is this knight on d5 is a beauty, and 2, this h-file will be opened at some point, and if black isn't well prepared to deal with it, there's some trouble. So the question immediately is black threatening somehow to put a knight on e6 and then maybe play bishop c6, take this knight off the d5 square and put a knight on f4 to kind of clog up some of the queen side? Possible.
Or is he just trying to push b5 very quickly? Probably not. He doesn't have enough pieces to attack the king just yet.
Yeah, it's a good question of whether black is quick enough to launch an attack. And well, it's a good idea, honestly. Playing b5, trying to put a rook on b8, maybe even trying to play b4 in some variations. So
yeah, my only issue with that is it's going to take some time for black's bishop to have an open diagonal, and the attack is not going to be that powerful without it, or without the rooks doubled on the b file, or even anywhere on the queen side.
But how quick is the white attack, right? Because this queen on d2 would love to be on the h file, but there's no way to get there because there's no access to h3. You'd have to somehow move this knight and spend an extra tempo just to get the queen over there.
It looks like he can open up the h file pretty quickly and double his rooks, and he just took on g6.
Yeah.
Maybe that is what he's doing.
Well, just to kind of give a quick kind of funky line is, let's say your b5 move happens. Sorry, let's say rook h3, b5, rook h1, and let's say you do something like pawn takes c4. You always have to look for a tactic like this: rook h8 check, bishop takes h8 is forced, and queen h6 wins the game because the queen and rook line up on the h8 square. And if you move your bishop to g7,
coming in with the tactics, very nice one to show off.
I've done Chess.com tactics trainer. I've also been playing chess for a little bit. So
casual pitch for the tactics trainer. Do it. Be like Hess. See the tactics.
Isn't that the dream, right? Chess tactics, Hess tactics, right? So
couldn't have said it better.
I question, in a sense, the decision to take with the h pawn, because you can also take with the f pawn. It's a bit structurally damaging in the sense that you leave yourself with an isolated e pawn, but at the same time, you do open the f file for your rook, but you do have to worry about now the double comes with an attack of the a pawn on h7, so there's more to keep an eye on. So it's a really difficult decision, and he took back with the pawn h pawn immediately, and here's rook h3.
So yeah, he's doing what we talked about.
I think white's first. I don't see a way how white isn't. The very simple rook h1 move next, and rook h1 threatens a move like rook h7, where I'm trying to chop off his bishop on g7. So if I'm Flores, exactly, I was saying knight takes d5. After pawn takes d5, maybe try queen f6 and try a queen trade on f4. But
a queen trade would be so dreamy for black.
It's wishful thinking. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, it is.
But it's an idea. You might as well go for it, because if you can trade the queens off, there's definitely no mates. And bishop d7. Wait, rook h1.
Weird move.
Oh, okay. The idea. Well, actually, I'm going to question the idea. So rook h1.
Go for it.
Bishop takes g4, and rook h8 check. Now you take and you block.
You can block with bishop h5, right?
Right. And now knight g5. Do you have to sack your queen there? Like, if I do this and go knight g5, you might have to sack your queen. I mean, you do have to sack your queen on g5, and this is now, I think, good for white because there's a protected passed d pawn. So,
well, he didn't play that. He just played safe. He protected the g4 pawn, and he's just doubling his rooks. He is getting kind of low on time, so it makes sense if he's trying to go for the more obvious threats than calculating that long line you just showed. But then again, Cobian is very good at tactics, so that might not be the case.
Yeah, so rook e8 was played, and that's a good move because the king has the f8 square. So ideas now with trying to mate don't at all work out because queen h7 is no longer checkmate. The king is in
Shu Xiangyu just drew his game by the 50-move rule. They finally drew.
Yay!
Just throwing that out there.
On move 149. Good job, team.
All right.
And Wormpaka won as soon as I... Oh, poor Forrest Chen. Oh, Forrest. You went f6. Ben Feingold said don't do that.
Yeah, it was suicide. What could he do? But it was suicide when he's already almost dead, you know?
Yeah, the queen went to f4, which was a good move covering the c7 square. And that was all that he needed. Okay, that's brutal. Sorry, Forrest. I'm rooting for you, buddy. Oh. I wonder if Forrest, hates me or doesn't really know me. I've never met the person. But, he should probably, I just wanted to play better. I'm just rooting for him. So, okay.
He has been playing good. He has been playing pretty good. Don't,
No, he's played well some games.
Ooh, Flores is getting that queen trade on.
Sorry, I'm looking at Fedoseyev's game.
Oh, got it. Okay.
He didn't take Andrew Tang's queen, which was hanging, and instead made him move f4, which is just hilarious to me. So he went f4.
Oh, that is pretty funny, yeah.
he was, I guess, thinking that if this happened here, then both knights are hanging, and so maybe he's got something even better. And okay, white's still doing extremely well here and winning, but he went f4, which is hilarious, saying I'm going to protect my knight, and that way I can take the queen and not have to lose another piece in the process. But what a ridiculous move, because queen c8 is met by knight takes f7 check, and your rook is forced, so you have to give up your exchange on f7. So this is hilarious, but Fedoseev is crushing.
It reminds me of a quote my old coach used to say, when you find a good move, look for a better one. So I guess the better one was not taking the queen on e6.
That's a great quote, and oftentimes I tell people when you have a perpetual check, you always just put that in your back pocket and look for more. Right. And now all of a sudden, Cobian's position looks terrible because
because I told you the queens got traded off. It was a very exciting moment.
Oh, I missed it. Let's see. Oh, the queen went to f4. Okay.
Yep.
Followed my advice. Didn't want to take on f4 to open up the rook's attack on the e4 square. So this happened, and f5. Wow, what a concept. Well, the knight on h2 is just weird. It was trying to come to g4, but now it's coming backwards. And this bishop does a beautiful job of covering a lot of the squares here. And so here comes a Cobian for the f6 square.
Yeah, someone commented, LOL, 7 pawns on 1 rank. Very true.
Yeah, there were. It's kind of looking like Connect 4.
Yep. True. It's a little hard to look at.
So what's going on here? So is rook a6 just a move, trying to stop knight f6 check from happening? Because knight f6 is a bit annoying. And the point of knight f6 is to trade this bishop, get my pawn in f6, and then use this h-file for a zillion checks. So the black king needs to find a way to escape. So king f7 is one idea that comes to mind. And the other idea is to go rook a6 and just cover the f6 square. Although maybe I'm not really getting out, because rook a6, check. Takes. If I take on f6,
then you have h6.
Yeah, just give a million checks like this. And at the very least, white is making a draw, but I think white can play for more in a position like that. So what to do?
And then after king f7, white still plays knight f6.
Maybe. But maybe I can... Ooh, you're trying to mate me.
Better move?
Well, I was trying to take it and take twice, but this move rook h7 is sort of devious with this second rook coming down for a checkmate. Wow,
moving the king up risks his king getting trapped.
We used to be friends, and then you just did that, so...
It happens.
So knight h5. Now it's tricky, but 14 seconds left for a Cobian. That's not good.
Oh, man.
So you need to...
Come on, Cobian. You got this.
Why are you rooting for VAR? Come on.
I like Cobian. He's always very friendly and always giving good tips on chess.
That is true. I'm not really rooting against him, but Mauricio...
I haven't been to St. Louis often, but every single time I've been there, I've seen a Cobian.
Yeah, he's
a lot of time as a local coach.
Exactly, resident grandmaster. Watch out for this g6 bishop. Rook g8 comes in. Now maybe a4 for white. So try to get away this pawn chain. Because king takes f6 would be a big blunder because bishop h5. So maybe play rook a6 here. And the idea is that I'm taking on f6 with my rook, but now a4. Play a4. Do it.
Yes, of course he will. Yep, that was the better option. He did not want to open the file that soon.
But black's pieces are in weird positions. Bishop c4 comes. And if king e7 here, there's always king e5 ideas for white.
Yeah, this looks very dangerous. Should he swing? No, his rook is under attack. Okay. He's just defending it.
Yeah, and I think white actually missed a better opportunity a couple of moves ago. We don't have a lot of time for a Cobian, so it's an understandable miss. But here, back in this position after... Where was it? Here, he could have taken on g6. Rook takes g6, play bishop h5. You have to go rook g8 and then use your d-pawn as a distraction. So you take on g6 next, and your d-pawn runs through. So you, at the very least, white goes up a piece. So that was an option earlier. Let's stick to the game. Wow, this b-pawn started running down the board.
Yeah, Cobian was able to cut off the rook from protecting the pawn on b2. His bishop's very nicely placed on b5. So he's going to get the pawn that he was down back. And after he gets the pawn back, his pieces are way more active. So he's looking better now, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, he's looking great. So now, rook h2 is coming to h6. This bishop on b5 is so strong. It cuts the b file off. It can go to c6. No, not c6 now. It would blunder the bishop. But here's bishop c4. He also could have went rook h6 there, probably.
Right.
Now, black's position stinks. What happened?
Yeah, it's just been a couple reversals here. But maybe, because before we were saying it looked silly tricky for a Cobian, but it seemed like he just had a really nice attack. He was able to compensate for it.
And now he's repeating moves, which I don't think he should do.
Oh, he's getting some increment. He doesn't know what to do.
Right, so bishop draw by agreement.
No.
Wow, that's a great save by Flores because his position was getting really tough. And like I said, there was a missed opportunity for Cobian in his time trouble. He had a great opportunity to win a piece. And not just an opportunity, it was a fact. You know, he could have done it. And I think black got greedy by taking the pawn on b2. But at this moment here, he had this opportunity. I keep saying opportunity. Stop saying opportunity. He could have taken on g6, played bishop h5. You have to protect your rook somehow with rook g8, and in comes d6. And the point being that I'm trying to take your rook on g6 twice, and after king f6 takes, bishop takes, you can't take my bishop or I get a queen. So a missed chance, not opportunity, a missed chance.
Look at you with that wide vocabulary. Bravo, Hess.
So Yaroslav Zherbuk won with the black piece over Midtkoff. We didn't even really get to see that, but I'm just scrolling back towards the game. It looks like black had a beautiful center and made his move rook g5. So giving up this pawn on h7, that's a great idea. And the point is that after rook g5 on move 23, that if you can't take with the bishop on h7 because you lose your rook to the bishop on d7, and if you take with the rook on h7, simply king to g8, and your bishop is a little overwhelmed on the f5 square, attacking the bishop and getting attacked by it, but also protecting the rook. So you'd have to make some sort of move like rook g7 check. But this kind of transition can only favor black, who has a massive pawn center and can just take this pawn on g7. So unfortunately for Midtkoff, he went down in flames, couldn't get the h-pawn going, which he should have probably taken, and now the black central pawns rolled down the board. And
yeah, he still had been playing pretty well this round. It was just an unfortunate result for him.
A bad king and pawn ending for Midtkoff, essentially, is what happened, where he went for it, but those who don't queen on time lose. That's I've heard that before.
I'm going to have so many great quotes after this stream.
Well, we're going to go over to the Chengdu match versus Australia. And so we saw Forrest Chen lose. We saw Fedoseev crushing Andrew Tang, and that game also ended in a smooth victory for St. Louis. The point is, you take my knight on d3, I give you a checkmate on the back rank. So,
right.
Unfortunate indeed. Okay, bringing up the Chengdu, Australia. So let's see if, okay, Chu Ruotong is still playing. Well, last time, remember, we couldn't find Chu Ruotong's game.
So let's give her more attention.
Whoa. Chu Ruotong playing Timur Koibokarov. Whoa, this position is interesting. So she has the black pieces. She's up a pawn, but her queen is getting trapped, maybe?
Yeah, that's what we need to figure out here.
It absolutely is getting trapped because, no, we can go to a1. I take it back. Queen a1 is an option.
What? Looks like the only option here.
Yeah, because queen b1, rook b5. If you take my pawn on e4, which is how your queen wants to escape, now bishop d5 happens with a nice attack on many, many pieces on that diagonal. So queen a1, what a weird move. And then something like rook c7 looks very simple. Just go after the e-pawn.
Right.
I hate this position for black. Bishop d5 is still
so
a threat.
Uncomfortable to play this kind of position when you feel like your queen can be trapped any moment and your opponent has just very active pieces.
Yep, I agree.
It's not fun at all, but hopefully it ends better than her last game did. Yeah. Of course, she's playing up a lot, so let's keep that in mind.
Yeah, she went for a bit of a risky line by playing queen a5 in the Grunfeld and taking on c3, which is...
She definitely did. And since there's a lot more people watching now, let's remind them again that Timur, although his rating says 2200, he's actually 2400. It's not updated, and he's playing like a 2500. So he has been playing very well.
Yeah, Timur is great. Like I said, I've had him in my fantasy chess team most weeks, and he has been playing well, doing well. can't complain when that's your board 3. And in some weeks, he's been board 4, I believe. So it's a very even lineup from Australia. They're currently up 4.5, 3.5 over the heavily favored Chengdu Pandas. And if you look at the live odds, by the way, St. Louis is up 7-5, and they're 97% odds of winning. And that's because they only need the magical 8 points, as a tied match is a win for them. In sports, there's a home field advantage. In Pro Chess League, it's a tie sees you through to the Final Four. And let's see.
We'll see. It's exciting to see Australia playing so well.
Yeah, they're still the underdogs according to the simulations that the statisticians at Chess.com ran for their predictions, because Chengdu is the rating favorite. But I don't know. I'm not really a firm believer that Chengdu is favored just because they're rating favorites, because players like Timur, who for some reason that rating still says 2,200 when he's nearly 2,500.
Right. When they're doing the stats, they're looking at their past games as well as their rating and taking into consideration all of the tiebreakers, right?
I believe so. I'm not sure.
That would make sense.
And we have over 10,000 viewers over there on Twitch. I'm seeing the numbers grow and grow. So welcome everybody to the quarterfinals of the Pro Chess League. For those of you just joining us, I should bring up the bracket just to show you what teams have been eliminated. In the playoffs started with 16 teams. We're down to the 2 qualifiers one from the Eastern Division. That's the Armenia Eagles. The qualifier from the Central Division. They will be going live to San Francisco for the semifinals, and Australia versus Chengdu. One of those teams will join them, and Minnesota versus St. Louis. It looks like the Archbishops will be joining the other 2 teams from the Eastern and Central Divisions in St. Louis, in San Francisco. Just a reminder, the finals, San Francisco, April 2018, April 7th, April 8th. But
yeah, that's super exciting.
Back to chess.
Yeah. And you were talking about the home advantage with advancing on an 8-8 tie. That's not going to be the case in the semifinals. There's actually going to be a blitz tiebreaker. So for those of you complaining about the tiebreaker, at least there's going to be a change in the format in the final. Yeah.
The tie breaks, you'll be playing tiebreaker games in the semifinals, as all teams are coming from different divisions, which means you have to make the regular season worth something. And in sports, you get the home court advantage, home field advantage. In the chess, one plays 4, 2 plays 3, kind of deal. But they have to incentivize the players to go all out every single week in the regular season. It may be tweaked next year, but for this year, this is what it is. So I'm going to pull up the St. Louis games as well, because it's the finale of that matchup. So we should keep an eye on that, but I'll focus on Chengdu. Where are these games? Okay, Mauricio Flores, pulling up your game. Midtkoff, I just saw your name.
So we're looking at Jerbook's game.
Well, I'm just pulling up all the games just to make sure I have them for later.
To make sure we don't miss any. Yeah, good call.
So I'm going to stick to Chengdu just because they have a little bit more time trouble, or they're on the verge of getting time trouble. I'm pulling up the Nihua versus Alexei Serrana game in particular, as that game is fascinating, as Nihua has gone up a second pawn, opposite colored bishops, queen and 2 rooks each. But if you look at Serrana's capabilities here, queen takes f4 is just the immediate move that comes to mind, is saying, I'm not going to trade the queens off the board. I'm going to get an attack going. If I take on f4, I attack the pawn on d4, I attack the pawn on h4, queen e3 check is an option. Yeah, this is
much more double-edged than it seems.
And there it goes, queen takes f4. So what do you do if you're Nihua here? Because queen f3 is just a retreat that trades queens anyway.
Right.
And the d4 pawn still hangs.
Although Nihua is up a pawn, so if he needs to resort to a safe option, he can.
Though this queen trade is a little bit frustrating if you do indeed take. You can take on h4, but if you take the queen and try to take this d4 pawn, I trade you, and I play this move c6, and I don't see how you're stopping me from playing c7 and then c8, because you're not in time to defend everything. I think you have to sack your bishop, because just to show everyone quickly, trying to defend with the rook on c8 allows bishop b7. I kick your rook out, I get a queen. So instead of this rook d8 c8 maneuver, you play bishop d6, c7 occurs. I say, okay, I'll take you on c7, and then I'll take this pawn on h4, and this is now draw territory, where you'll essentially get into a position that is rook and bishop versus rook, theoretically a draw, and so Serrana has that ability to cop out at any moment. He can bail himself out by trading queens, by sacrificing the bishop and getting into a theoretical draw. So I know it's a lot for some of our less experienced users, but
it's good that you're going over those lines. I think you're explaining it pretty well.
Yeah.
What about queen e4 instead of queen f3?
So queen e4, interesting, definitely interesting. So queen e4, just trying to give your bishop a better square. The only issue I have with that is now your bishop is hanging on the e4 square. So if I take, bishop takes, and now take on d4, okay, we give a trade, and now after c6, when I play bishop d, okay, they agreed on a draw. But yeah, bishop d6 covers that square. So they agree. Let's see, queen e4, as was played.
That's a little weird, since I would think the Chengdu Pandas want to push a little bit here.
Yeah, they are down a point on the scoreboard, but it is a drawn position because what was going to happen was bishop d6, as I was just trying to show, take on c7, rook takes c7, rook takes e4, pawn takes f6, pawn takes f6, rook takes h7. You end up with rook and pawn versus rook and pawn, completely drawn position. So fair result, definitely a fair result, but disappointing for Chengdu when they, Nihua had the white pieces in particular.
Yeah. I guess seeing these kinds of draws get agreed on so early is also a little bit surprising when it's such a fast time control, since anything can happen.
Yeah.
At least from what we've seen. We've seen some crazy blunders, so I don't think that's too hard to say.
Right. And I have the game between Chu Ruotong with the black pieces against Timur Korbakarov, and, well, she's fighting her way out of this. She said, my queen is weird on a1, but it's also an aggressive piece. It's still alive. It's protecting this bishop on a6 in case it needs an extra piece to defend it. The e7 pawn can be captured at any moment. Alexandra, I don't know about you, but I'm still worried about that queen sitting on a1. I mean, to move that queen to e2, just saying I'm going to take with my queen on c4, gain more space. I'm worried about black's position.
Yeah, it's definitely not a comfortable position to play, and I'm sure white has the advantage here. But, I don't know, maybe black can try and wiggle it out. She's very desperately trying to develop her knight as quickly as possible and make her rook active.
Yeah. Activity is a must because the queen on a1 is going to get trapped if you don't get active quite quickly. But I think and there he goes. He takes the e7 pawn. So now
maybe rook d8 later on, or even now. Yeah,
rook d8, but still, white is going to go d5. This pass pawn in the center is great. You've connected pawns in the center. So if you cut the board essentially from the d file to the h file, white has 5 pawns, black has 3.
Right.
You cut to the c to the a, and most importantly, the b and a files, black has 2 protected, unopposed pass pawns. These pawns are very slow. These pawns in the center take up great space and will continue to do so. And not to mention a move like queen b3 will come, attacking the f7 square, and this knight on a6 is a donkey. It's not exactly being a useful piece. So I love white's position. Long story short.
Yeah, I mean, white doesn't even have to go and try to trap his queen. Like you said, he's just starting to already have a better position regardless.
Yeah. The queen's just gone too far.
Inactive. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's not good. So what? This would be a big win for Australia if they could pull it out, because that would put them up 6-4. And despite the odds that are there on the screen saying that Chengdu is the higher-rated team and thus stronger, I don't agree with it. I think that Australia has been performing well throughout the season, performing well in the playoffs, and performing particularly well in this match. Right.
I mean, and it's very fair to say they're performing well now, since they already have the advantage so far in the match, 5-4.
Yeah. So let's go out to other games, because the game between Brandon Clark, he has 2 minutes and 23 seconds. He's playing Zhu Zhongyu, who's got well over 6 minutes and is trying to get an attack. But I think Brandon Clark, we've talked about him several rounds. He likes those light square bishop versus the dark square bishop. He held the game against Yu Yangyi, and here he's just up a pawn. And this battery on the second rank is not doing anything as the queen and bishop protect each other. No, this is nothing for black. And if anything, white could try to turn this around if the rook can get free. So playing a move like a4 in the future by white, getting your king some safety, and then bring this rook into the game. And if you can pile up pressure somehow on the b7 square, it's white who can be better.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Clark is playing well again. he's been really helping his team so far. A good board 4, and the rest of their team is very solid as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, when the 2300s are performing as well as 2500s, you know good things are happening.
Absolutely. So, who else is in this match? We haven't seen this game between Yu Yangyi and Anton Smirnov. Yu Yangyi, incredibly talented player. I think he's like number 12 in the world at the moment. I'm not positive.
Wow.
But he's trying to make a miracle happen here. He's trying to win with the white pieces. And
Right.
he's much better, right? This king on c4 is great
Right.
compared to the king that's
Right.
boxing on g7.
He is much better, but it's very difficult, even with, you know, some advantage in this type of endgame, to actually convert it to a win. So that's what we're going to be focusing on in this game.
I think he's close because his next move, Alexandra, is knight c5. And the point of knight c5 is just to, okay, he went bishop b4, Smirnov did, but a move like knight c5, if you take me on c5, I can take with the king, and this a-pawn is going to decide the game. My king is just so far advanced. To get to any weakness, quote-unquote weakness of white, you have to get to the base of my pawn chain. But that pawn's an h2. How is this knight on c6 going to get to the pawn h2 in time and then get back to cover my a-pawn? It's not.
Right.
And so by
and
doing...
if he pushes a5 here, then you just, in the initial position, you just play king b5, it looks like.
Yeah, knight b3 first or king, you know, either one. But knight b3 first may be a little bit more precise. King b5, win the a-pawn. So Yu Yangyi...
Right.
Well, he's making magic happen here because I think black is just losing this pawn and with it the game. So really nice technique, it seems, from the number 2 Chinese player in the world. The other top player is the one and only Ding Liren, who's playing the candidates tournament and
Right.
You know, forced to be reckoned with. So we'll come back to Yu Yangyi as this game progresses. It looks like Brandon Clark drew his game, which is another good result for Australia. He's playing a grandmaster who's higher rated, and he held him off and made a draw. It looks like they repeated moves, and this makes sense. They just kind of followed, the rook followed the queen and makes a draw. So that leaves us with Smirnov and Yu Yangyi and Timur. And
That's good. The odds are getting slightly more in Australia's favor.
yeah, and if Timur
Still
can
favoring the Chengdu Pandas, though.
I don't agree with that. I'm just going to continue to disagree with it. And if Timur can take this one home, and Alexandra, do you see where this knight on d3 is going? Because I don't.
I think it's just staying there. It's a mission impossible for that knight. He'll probably have to sacrifice a pawn on b4 to get it out.
Yeah, Chu Rutong, she's in trouble here because, you know, if she sacrifices the pawn on b4, like you said, that doesn't look particularly great. So rook b3, the knight's not getting out. So either you just try to push your a-pawn forward, which is too slow, because after a3, bishop c3, a2, I can even make a move like pawn to h3 probably to give my king some safety, but rook d1 is of course the best move, just covering the square and covering the back rank. Instead, if you play knight b4, I simply take, pawn takes, and please, 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 for our viewers, do not go rook takes b4 and get checkmated on the back rank. Your king needs some safety, play the move pawn to g3, get your king to g2, you'll eventually start gobbling up pawns on the queen side, and you're much, much better. But please remember, give your king space to breathe.
Yeah. Oh, and we just had a great comment. I could have been a contender, said pandas, an endangered species. They're definitely getting endangered in this round. Well, we're going to see if they survive this extinction threat by the kangaroos.
Yeah. Now this is getting troublesome for the I was to say the Chengdu Chandas, the Chengdu Pandas, tongue twister. Here we go, rook to b7. I like playing g3 more, just to have my king on g2. But you know, even if the rooks start coming down to the second rank, maybe having the king, the h2 square is a little bit better. But I don't know if I love it. Yeah, check, good move. King h2 forced. And now we'll move like rook c2. Or rook a2 first.
Yeah, also good. Doubling on the C rank, looking towards f2 and g2 is a nice idea here.
Yeah, this is going to be powerful. How do you stop it? How did this just turn so quickly?
We've asked that so many times during these matches.
Yeah, I think like a move like g4 or something by white was definitely better than this because you need this pawn on f2 protected, and now it's not protected. And so what do you do here? What? Okay, I want to make a move like king g3, but it doesn't really help because rook comes to c2. If I give a check, bishop comes to f8. And maybe I go knight e5, actually.
Knight e5 threatening knight d7.
Yeah.
Is that enough? Can black maybe hold a perpetual in that kind of position?
Yeah, I mean, it's getting close, right? So knight d7, you take here.
Right.
But maybe my king can start running up the board. And my king finds safety on the
The king on the run.
Actually, it gets checkmated if I go too far. So
d5 instead.
d5. Okay, saying I'm going to stop you from getting a perpetual down there by pushing my d-pawn to the queening square.
Right.
But I don't see how this is going to work.
Rook takes f2. I mean, rook c2 seems forced. I guess knight e1 afterwards. Yeah,
knight e1's a decent attempt. I'm also thinking about the move bishop c3 here, locking in this rook on b3, saying you don't have enough protection of this pawn on d6, so I'll play rook d8 next, and if you go d7, my king will run to f8 to e7. So
that's an interesting plan, actually. I think it's counterintuitive because you think that black is just going to go for the g2 pawn, but that's pretty interesting.
Oh, look at the clock, though. 9 seconds of counting down for Chu Ruotan, and she has a great position now. But what is she doing? She forgetting about her clock?
Rook d8.
So the idea...
it looks like a variant of what you were saying.
Well, if e5, I think she's trying to sacrifice an f3, take on e5, take on d6, take all the pawns in the world. But that's still...
Oh, okay.
Wait, what? Now e5. No, she's going wrong here.
Right. I mean, now she didn't have the attack on g2, and she didn't cut off white's rook, so it seemed like she didn't choose either of the plans.
Right. So f takes e5 is being met by rook b8. Play rook b8. Let's go. Timur, you have 14 seconds left. And now rook takes d6, but all of a sudden you have some problems with your bishop on the f8 square. So rook e8 is a good starting point. Bring the other rook to b8. Oh, watch out. Rook takes f3 is a threat.
Good move.
Yeah, rook takes f3 was a big threat.
Yeah. And so they're playing so quickly. I smell a blunder coming.
Absolutely. Rook f7. Oh, I don't like that move.
Okay.
Oh, wait a second.
C5 check.
Bishop d6 is coming.
There we go. That's a nice one.
Rook d7. Okay, our king g1. Okay, so black's better. Rook f2. Rook f2. Go for it.
What just happened?
g4. Go g4. You're threatening mate. g5 check, and then rook takes h7 is checkmate. So don't blunder that. King f1 here. I have this sinking feeling that somehow black is going to allow g5 with check. So king f1. Oh, okay. Then rook takes h7 and draw.
This is okay. It's a draw. What a draw for Ruotan.
Yeah, I mean, she had a terrible position early on, and somehow she escaped it. But then she had a winning position, and Timur almost let her win. Okay, this is a draw. So draw agreed.
Right.
Smirnov lost to Yu Yangyi, which means the match is all tied up. So my criticism of the predictions seems to be wrong. The live odds suggest that 65% in the Chengdu Pandas' favorite, and that should only go up when the game is
it was a bold prediction. It's good to see those.
Yep. So I'm going to... Okay, this game they're going to take an f3 and agree for a draw. So 6-6 in this match, tied. The Chengdu Pandas have draw odds here. So let's skip on over to the St. Louis matchup versus Minnesota, because this is for all the marbles. St. Louis up 7-5, and I'll just bring up the St. Louis card for a second, just then we get to the chess.
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of new people here. Show them the players.
These four players: Vladimir Fedoseev, Gurevich and Cobian, Yaroslav Zherbuk, and Forrest Chen, leading the way against the Minnesota Blizzard, who have Mauricio Flores, Andrew Tang, Daniel Gurevich, Nikola Midtkoff. It's the Grandmaster lineup for St. Louis, and the lower rated board 4 versus the very evenly spread team of Minnesota. All players between 24-40 and 25-40 thereabouts. So I always like having the super strong GM lineups that St. Louis has, and it's been proven to work out in this match. And in Yaroslav Zherbuk in particular, he's had a tough go of things, but after knight e4, he went knight takes d5. He's removing the guard of this knight on e4, winning a pawn, and well, certainly looks like a free pawn to me, Alexandra.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just you remove the guard and take on e4, go up a pawn. Happy time for white.
This is good after the initial rough game he started off with.
Yeah, this has been fun. I want to give a shout out to our 12,240 plus viewers, people like Icelandic Gambit. I just see so many names here. I can't even say them all. Irish Exit, X-Cole 2015. Everyone here, we appreciate you all. Jackie the Swede. Unfortunately, your Stockholm Snowballs, if you are Swedish, were knocked out earlier. So, thanks for everyone for tuning in. We're watching you. Calculated Blunder, Grandmaster Ben Feingold, everybody in the Twitch chat. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But back to the chess, as I say so frequently.
Now I feel like I want to shout out a couple of people too. Shoot the cheese, no handle available, napkin. Thanks, everybody. I didn't want to be left out on that fun, Hess.
I don't mean to, be one-sided with my thank yous, but I just know that there's so many viewers here, and I'm trying to multitask, doing commentary, talking to you, which is always a pleasure, and then also making moves on a chessboard. It's like,
of course. You're.
It's tough.
You're handling a lot right now. You're multitasking very well.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, knight takes g3 was a nice return shot by Daniel Gurevich. His idea is, if we have hanging pieces, your rook hangs with a check to the king, and then I'll pick up your knight on b6 next. That means that black goes ahead material in exchange. So you can't do that. Mm-hmm. You can throw in a move like knight f6 check, saying g takes f6, queen takes g3 with check, and now all of a sudden, this black king is looking a bit iffy, because where are you going to run to for safety? I don't see a good way to go. If you go to f8, which is pretty natural, maybe I ignore the fact that my knight is under attack on e5 and play a move like queen h4, saying, where is that the king going? I'm going to hunt you down in the very near future. So to me, it looks like white has full compensation for a sacrificed piece if he so chooses. He can also decide, I don't want to get too complicated, take back on g3 with the pawn.
Right, when he already has a good position.
Yeah, as a decent looking position. What I don't like, though, is if h takes g3, bishop takes d5. Let's say we get some sort of trades on d5 in an endgame, this pawn on d4, with a bad bishop on b2, blockaded by its own piece. I've read enough books on Capablanca, enough endgame technique books by Shereshevsky and Dvoretsky.
But continue explaining that position.
No, I've already changed it. Don't worry. I was just saying, I've read these endgame books. I know that isolated pawns could be quite bad. Oh, I love this move, d5.
Yes. Oh wait, this is even more exciting.
It's better. It's just great because bishop takes d5. If I take you on d5 and you try to take back, not only is knight d7 forking queen and king, it's actually a checkmate on the board because my queen covers the g file, my rook covers the e file. That would be checkmate. So d5.
That would be beautiful.
I love it. d5 is great. Saying you can't capture me twice on the square or the knight comes to d7. If you capture me on e5, I can even just capture you on e6. And the point being, if you take on f4, watch out. Look, this bishop is now opened up from the b2 square. So queen g7 check and mate comes in short order. So, if this game is over,
in hot water here. I don't think there's any way for black to survive this attack.
And if white wins this game, St. Louis officially wins the match because all they need is 8 points. So we'll keep an eye on this one. This is just blowing him out of the water. Game of the week possibilities for this one. And let's check out how the teammates are doing to see if it even matters. Vladimir Fedoseev with black against Mauricio Flores. He's temporarily at least up a pawn, and he's in no danger whatsoever losing. So that's another half point that St. Louis should be able to count on. And c3 was played. Even some winning chances for Fedoseev here. Let's see, a murder castle. That is my good friend Forrest Chen with the white pieces.
What did you call him? A murder castle, his username.
That's his username. And he's doing really well with the white pieces against Nikola Midtkoff. In fact, he looks just better here. Oh my God, what a tactic.
Oh, okay.
He's opened up the queen on each other. The queen has to take, rook takes c8. Now Forrest Chen is up in exchange. It's the second game we've seen him against a Minnesota Grandmaster up in exchange. Forrest Chen is balling out. Let's go, Forrest.
He's not going to be NM for long. He's definitely upgrading soon.
I think we can just upgrade him for this game. I don't know. For those of you staff at Chess.com, can you please just change NM to FM or something? This is great play by Forrest Chen. So I'm proud of him. He's playing well in this game. And what is going on in Andrew Tang's game against Gurevich and Cobian? What in the world? If you are new to chess, turn away your head. Don't look at this game.
Yeah, you're going to poison what you think about it.
Wow, and bishop g3, a calm-looking move. And the point of bishop g3 is, knight takes e4. I'm trying to figure out what the exact point is. Maybe there's queen f4. And if you take on g3 here, I'm going to open up the position more with ideas like knight to g5, taking over the attack on the f7 square. But our bishop c4 is possible at some point. I could just take on g3 as well. There are lots of open files and things like that, but I like black's position, frankly. I'm a greedy guy sometimes. He went knight takes e4. I mean, there's so much material. You could take this pawn on d5 next. This is like a phantom attack for Tang.
There's just way too much going on here.
Yeah, phantom attack for sure. So, oh, shout out to my buddy Romero Caesar, who's in the chat as well. I'm looking at you and everyone in the Twitch chat. We've well over 12,000, 12,700 plus. And yeah, this is great. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Hopefully you're as excited as we are to see, first and foremost, St. Louis.
Exactly. I see a lot of people cheering for the players. Go Penguin. Forrest Chen is insane. Keep supporting these players. They're working hard for you guys.
Well, Forrest Chen is really working it right now. H5 should decide this game on the spot, breaking open the black king side even more than it's already open. Forrest Chen. Oh, queen f3, gunning for the f6 square. And once the f6 square is taken over, you're going to see a checkmate on the h8 square. So Nikola Midtkoff can indeed resign here in good conscience. He's dead lost. Queen f6 is unstoppable. Follow that up with rook h8 checkmate. So good on you, Forrest.
Beautiful force mate here.
A forest mate or a force mate? What'd you say there?
Both works.
Yeah, this is great. So, well, the Chengdu match, I think we're going to pull up those boards because it's tied 6-6. And we'll keep an eye, of course, on St. Louis. But with Chengdu, Australia tied 6
yeah,
apiece.
St. Louis is almost going to steal the win.
Yes. St. Louis would have to lose only half a point out of their 4 very good-looking positions. So that's not...
Yeah, it feels pretty safe.
Yep. And I'm pulling up these games here. Smirnov and Nihua. Okay, so I have all 4 Chengdu Australia games open, and I'm starting with Nihua as black against Anton Smirnov. And the first thing I notice is neither king is happy. The white king is probably a little happier, but still not too safe.
Yeah, even though he's in the center, he has his pawns a lot closer, and white can easily open up the king side.
That's a great point. The closeness of the pawns to the king likes its moat in front of him, so the king has it going on for white, and from white's point of view, h4 is coming to break open the king side. That said, isn't black playing for an idea like c5, either now or in the very near future? And I don't think white is super happy with the king on d2. I may have kind of spoken too soon.
When you said black was less happy.
Yeah, because rook c8. Like rook c8, c5, blast that side of the board open. And even though you have this very solid pawn formation, the rook will get into an open file. The knight maybe will play to c4.
Yeah, rook d1. He's going to try and pseudo castle with king e1 and king f1. I think he was worried about that same idea you were just pointing out.
I love this move. Rook hd1. He's hand castling by bringing his king back over this way. So that's a great decision by Anton Smirnov, who's young and talented, and he needs this game because they're tied 6-6. But Chengdu, the 1 seed, nope, the 2 seed, the San Diego Surfers with the 1 seed. Chengdu has the draw odds in this match, as Australia is the 4 seed. I'll bring up the bracket real quick just to remind everybody where the teams are coming from. And there you see that Chengdu was the 2 seed. They beat the Dallas Destiny. Australia, the 4 seed, upset the San Diego Surfers, and they crushed them. It was a team that hadn't lost all season, the only undefeated team, if I'm not mistaken, but they walloped them. It wasn't even close. So, yeah. Let's see. Back to the chess. Off of the bracket. Where do we go from here? More Chengdu games versus Australia, I guess.
Yep, we have to go there.
So should we go to your girl, Chu Ruotong? Do we
see how she's doing? Yeah, let's go.
We've got a King's Indian, where just to show you players at home who may be familiar with the King's Indian. Okay, so black strikes in the center.
Just found her game.
And it's this line with knight takes e5. So the orthodox line, it's kind of old school. The point is that black always has trouble taking this knight on e5, because if you take on e5, there's rook d8 check, and you may think that you're protecting your pieces along the back rank, but bishop takes f6 comes simultaneously protecting the rook on d8 and removing the guard of the rook on e8. So you can't do that. So after knight takes e5, rook e8, queenside castle. Okay, now attacking this knight. And we sit here after knight h5. And, okay, so there's a lot of things that are hanging here. Bishop takes h5. Idea being, let's ruin black's pawn structure, actually is terrible, because bishop takes e5 now, comes with a hanging rook on d6. I'll take your bishop on h5 next move. So don't think that knight is just
Don't even think about the knight on h5.
Yeah. And you need to do something about your knight on e5. You can move backwards. Of course, you move to went to g4. I was going to say to d3, excuse me. But the knight on g4 now has this h6 square in some variations, especially if this bishop takes on c3. You get rid of this good-looking bishop on the long diagonal. So I have a question for you, Alexandra. Not an easy question, but a question. So if you're black here, right, you can play moves like bishop takes, I'm trying to move the pawn, bishop c3, pawn takes, and then go for this e4 pawn. Not yet. You have to take on g4, and then even up the material with a move like rook takes e4.
Yeah, I'm always very hesitant to trade off my dark squared bishop in the King's Indian.
Yeah.
It tends to hold the position together completely. Of course, white's putting so much pressure on black here that he's trying to create any type of weakness on white's end.
Right, you answered the question I was going to ask, and I think you answered it very well. The point I was making is you're returning and restoring material equality. Right, you get your pawn back, 6 pawns and 6 pawns. Okay, both sides have all these weaknesses, these double h pawns, these double c pawns. But the problem is, once this bishop comes to f6, there are all these checkmating ideas because the g7 and h8 squares are taken. And white can just put a rook on d1 and play for the d file. So I agree with you that I would like to get some, keep the initiative going rather than necessarily restoring equality. So move like, by restoring equality, I mean material equality. Knight c5 was played. I like it, coming for the e4 pawn. And if you go f3, black's idea is to play f5. A great shot saying, if you take me on f5, I take you on c3 now. And at the end of this variation, your bishop on e2 is a free piece. So you got to be careful before allowing black to play f5 and open up the e line.
Yeah, that's what... Okay, knight f6, so he's not even going to let Brandon Clark try anything with f5 here.
Yeah, she's kind of keeping him stuck a little bit. But you can trade everything on f6, and then you just take on e4 and trade on e4, rook takes, and okay, black is totally fine here. You've evened the game up.
Black probably wants to trade off here because his position is so cramped. If he doesn't do that, he doesn't have anything going on here. Yeah,
just trade everything and then get equality. But from Brandon Clark's perspective, he's got the black pieces. Maybe that's not a bad result, but from Chengdu's perspective, it's a huge draw because every half point inches the team closer to that 8 out of 16 score that they need to tie and win.
Oh, and St. Louis already has 9 points, so they're going to the semifinals. They're going to SF.
Wow, so Yaroslav Zherbuk won on time in this position. Okay, he's up a queen. He's threatening queen c5 with mating ideas. So we saw it a long time ago, but he somehow won material by playing in the center. And okay, the black king went on a miraculous run, but it didn't end well. After rook takes d6, right. You're forced to lose your queen, and then all of a sudden white goes pawn hunting. And also, Forrest Chen checkmated his grandmaster opponent. So Forrest Chen, you're my MVP of the day. You're 2 out of 4 finish, and now St. Louis is up 10-5. So by the way, St. Louis is my champion pick, so I'm looking pretty good on that one.
That was good.
Yeah, my other teams aren't doing so well, but...
You also picked the Australians, right?
No, I picked Chengdu.
Okay.
So, okay, this match is over. So we'll take our mind off of St. Louis. Sorry to all you Minnesota fans. Your team is eliminated. You came close, but unfortunately couldn't quite make it in the end. And that
they still placed #1 in fan love. They were super supportive, and they won all of the voting as well beforehand.
Yeah, and the problem is, I think having the really strong GM lineups often beat these more even lineups. I really think that having 3 super strong GMs, Fedoseev, Zherbuk, Cobian, they just dominate their opponents. And when Forrest Chen, who's 2,100, is beating grandmasters, 2 of them, mind you,
right,
then you're in trouble. And we're reaching new heights here, 13,301 viewers at the moment. So applied mathematics saying Forrest with an emote. Someone saying that I picked UMBC over Virginia. So Carlino, I wish I could say I did that, but no, I didn't. Even though I have some good friends who graduated from UMBC, I did not, and nor did anybody really pick that upset in the other March Madness, not this March Madness.
Ben Folds is upset that Minnesota lost, but that's okay. You can pick a new favorite team now.
I'm sorry, Ben Folds. So let's check out how Yu Yengi is doing with the black pieces against Alexei Sorana. Ooh, he played f5. You permanently give control over the e5 square to this knight. So okay, I was about to say Sorana has a difficult choice. Taking on c6 and allowing this knight into e5, where it permanently sits, though you have an unopposed bishop, and you can play b6 and play for c5.
Right.
So, this is coming pretty quickly. Or, as in the game continuation, play bishop to d3, saying, you know what? I'm still taking this e5 square because I can play b4, I can play b5, I can play rook f to c1, and what are you doing, Yu Yengi? Like, what's your plan? If you ever...
Yeah, exactly. He'll be able to kick off the knight without having to trade it off for the bishop.
Yep, and if you ever play move f4, you are in big, big trouble on the light squares. I mean, you cannot open up this diagonal for the queen and bishop to operate on. So you don't have a break, and that's what I say to my students very frequently. The side that is often better in positions that look a bit unclear is the side that controls the breaks. And so if you can be the one who forces a break and you have those opportunities, you often control the dynamic of the game. And here black is trying to do that by playing b6 and c5, but at least for the time being, I mean, white can always play the move b4 and knight e5.
Yeah, so white played knight e5 right away. He didn't hesitate at all now that he can comfortably go to that square without trading off the knight. Like you said, black will probably continue with b6 and c5 here. He has to open it up because he can't do anything on the king side.
The problem, though, with b6 and c5 is that you're always going to be met with bishop a6 ideas at the right moment. So I can maybe take on d7, you take back on d7, and firstly your c-pawn will be hanging, but bishop a6 ideas, and I'm trying to control the c line. So it's not exactly like you're completely getting out of it. So bishop e8, potentially aiming to a c6, b6, c5, to do this idea on the queen side, or knight g6, trying to trade away the knights, but I love white's position. Oh,
knight
man.
c4. Yeah, how can you not like white's position here? White seems to have all of the play, and black's just trying to shuffle his pieces around, praying for some sort of play. He's just
so
waiting.
Beautiful.
Triple heavy pieces on the c file.
Oh, this is a gorgeous position, honestly. I couldn't imagine being happier about a position than this one. Just look at the pieces. Queen a4. Poke and prod. Go queen a4 to hit this a7 pawn. Always a decent idea. You do have to be a bit careful, I guess, because if the queen's on a4, once the c5 move comes in, there's a bishop attacking a queen. But a move like queen a4 is so tempting. I mean, I really want to play that move. Also, queen b3, just going after the e6 pawn is an idea. So b4, just clamping down on the queen side. Probably the best move.
Also looks good. He's getting even more space than he already has. He can still play queen a4 and queen b3 later on. Yeah,
now rook c7 is the idea is to meet queen a4 with b6, protecting the a7 pawn, so it's not really going anywhere. But you could kind of provoke that weakness by going queen a4 anyway, because there's a big problem for black, and after b6, I retreat my rook, say to c2. Once you go c5, I can just move my queen away, and you have problems down the c line. So you have to be careful with your rook on c7.
Yeah, why is he repeating the position, though?
Yeah, he's just figuring out what to do later. Queen b3, I like it.
Queen b3, but it's not like he's in time pressure. But sure, maybe he's playing around a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And it looks like Mauricio Flores beat Zherbuk. He beat Fedoseev, so he salvaged a respectable score from Minnesota, 6 points, and that's a great performance by Flores to beat Fedoseev, who's an incredibly strong player. But unfortunately, too little, too late, and we'll stick here with the match between Chengdu and Australia. And I'm loving this matchup. We're 13,700 plus fans, viewers, people who are trying to get better at chess. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We're looking at you in the Twitch chat and in the chess.com/TV chat as well. So thank you, everyone, for staying with us. We're top 6 channel on Twitch. And so
that's super exciting for chess.
And speaking of, with all these new viewers, let's explain a little bit. We're in the Pro Chess League run by Chess.com. The way it works is teams from all around the world, they set a lineup of 4 players with a maximum rating of 2,500. Now, what does that mean? See this number next to Yu Yengi, 2,750? That's his rating. So you need to average your 4 players to 2,500, and you can't go above that. So what you need to do is figure out, do you stack your team, have 3 very strong grandmasters on a much lower rated board 4, or do you have, a couple grandmasters who are a little bit lower rated, so your board 3 and 4 are stronger? And to give everyone an idea, of the bracket so far. Teams, when I say around the world, teams from France, the Migraines and Blockbusters, an all-French battle in the playoffs. We had Ljubljana Turtles against the Stockholm Snowballs. We had teams from India, Delhi and Mumbai, Estonia, Armenia, Webster, which is near St. Louis in Missouri, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, San Diego, Australia, Chengdu, Dallas. We had teams from Norway. We had two teams from Norway, actually. We had teams from Montreal. We had teams from, I don't even remember because there's some Iceland, from Riga, from Latvia. Just a really international global affair. So thank you everyone for tuning in, for wherever you are coming from, East Coast, West Coast, Europe, Asia, Africa. Thank you all for being here. And we're in a very tough spot here, 6-6 between Australia and Chengdu. And again, Chengdu, the 1 seed, has draw odds. That means if there is a tie, they win. So keep an eye out on that score. Australia needs 2.5 out of 4 here to claim a victory and move on to the Final Four, which will be live in San Francisco, April 7th and 8th. Oof, that was a lot to say.
You said it beautifully. You covered everything.
And some people are saying in the Twitch chat, missing a team from Brazil, missing a team from Mexico. Of course, we want to see more and more teams attempt to join the league. So teams from Spain.
And hopefully over the coming years, we'll see more people trying to qualify for the Pro Chess League. So if there's a country you don't see playing, go encourage chess players, strong chess players, to make a team. Okay,
I'm switching over our board to Timur Bokharov versus Zhu Zhongyu, because with the white pieces, Zhu Zhongyu has 2 rooks versus a knight and bishop. But the side with the rooks has an extra pawn. However, I'm liking if black is able to get this knight out, which is a big if, because I need to protect his bishop when e7. So king f7 was played. Rook b7 is definitely a good move, keeping this knight out of the game. So if I am Zhu Zhongyu, I either go rook 1 to c5, attacking the pawn on d5, attacking the pawn on a5, using the fact that the bishop is pinned to the king on f7. I think that's a great move. Or I play the move rook b7, intending to double on the 7th rank and keeping this knight stuck on a3. So
and to explain a bit to some of the people who came in, and normally a bishop and a knight is stronger than a rook, but in this position, obviously black's bishop is pinned. His knight on a3 is going to have a hard time getting out. So black's going to have to get as much advantage as he can while black's minor pieces are still trapped.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out to Fade Like Air Jordan, because it said Hess went from starring in Spider-Man to this. So that's a very funny comment here. And lots of chatter going on in Twitch.
This is your side job, right? After being a everyday hero.
Yeah, I try to be.
There you go. Okay, knight b1. So black is trying to bring his knight back into the game. Knight c3 seems necessary. Although after rook d7, it seems like d5 and d6 is coming.
Right. Yeah, the knight's making its way towards the center, but like you said, rook, well, I would maybe just take on a5, but then rook d8 comes, so that's an interesting moment. Don't get too greedy necessarily, because you can take this pawn, but if you do, then rook comes to d8, and now, well, then rook a7. This is not comfortable. I mean, just this feels awful.
Rook a7.
Feels bad, man. As the Twitch chat loves that.
You're learning the Twitch language. There's also feels Hess, man. So if you guys haven't used it yet, you definitely should get on that.
Yeah. We probably don't want to. Rook d6, great move, saying this king is not coming out of the pin. And now my idea is to go d5.
Is never happening.
Oh, big loss this will be for Timur Koibakov. And I should note, Alexandra, that knight e4 doesn't actually, well, it attacks the rook, of course, but taking on d6 won't actually do much, because after d5, if you ever take like this, there's always a pin here. So d5 is not precise, but the point still holds that there is a pin along the 7th rank. So move like king f1, getting the king to the center is perfectly good.
Right.
All right, let's check out some of these other games. I need to keep an eye everywhere, because
of course, this is
the round.
It's the most important round so far, obviously.
Uh-oh. Look at the game between Anton Smirnov and Nihua. It looks like Nihua with the black pieces. It's not only up a pawn, but look down the g-file. Uh-oh. I'm spelling huge amount of trouble here. In fact, I think Smirnov is going down. This will be an essential win for Chengdu. Because look at this, Alexandra. The threat now.
I'm looking at it, and I'm trying to find an escape for white. I'm struggling so far.
The idea is, let's say I make a random move, like rook to d1, just for argument's sake. Rook
Just to show what black's threat is here.
You're trying to take on g2 twice. This queen takes on g2, and a rook to g8, pinning this queen to the king, winning material. As Walt Clyde Frazier would say, if he was a chess fan, pinning and winning down the G line. If you're a New Yorker, you probably never take the G train, but if you do, looks like a nice little G train coming on here. So
G train, yeah, that's a good term for this.
It's just over. King F1 gets mated on the spot. No, it's just absolute toast. G3, if you had one more move to play rook h2, maybe you could survive.
Right,
but G3 is just checkmate.
If only we could play 2 moves at some point in the game.
Yeah, that'd be a nice little...
I mean, he can still take on G2.
Yeah, absolutely. Take on G2 now. That's the easily winning move. I assume he will see it. It's funny because even if you don't take on G2, and by funny, I mean for black, definitely not for white, is if you move your queen, you can also just start pushing your H pawn down the board, which is not fun. But bishop takes G2, as mentioned, winning the game immediately. So with that win, yeah, just not looking good. So
okay, so they're going to have 7 points. They just need one more win. And it already looks pretty good for them with a Xu Xiangyu game.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go over to Brandon Clark.
Brandon Clark, the hero of the Kangaroos.
He's the hero they need, but not the one they deserve. And I don't think he's winning this ending because right here, there's this problem on c4. Okay, actually, wait, it's black's move. So bishop takes c4, pawn takes, rook takes, king b3. Very good drawing chances from white because blacks only have one pawn. That said, I mean, black's ahead here. So Australia has to be happy about this board. And so we'll keep an eye here, but we'll have to tune in to some of the other games that are still going. We see that Yu Yangyi with the black pieces has...
Oh, yeah, he played rook d2, so black's just going to take the A pawn or the G pawn. It's getting it ahead in material, and white's king is going to be stuck on the back rank.
Right. I don't love this decision, frankly, because now, okay, take. Okay, I mean, he'll take on a2 and keep the a7 pawn protected. And this is dangerous. Rook takes h2 might be the best, and just play h5, h4. The thing is, if white is going for the pawns on the queen side, this one pawn takes care of 2. So let's put this one in green because it's good. These aren't good. And the b4 pawn covers the a3 square. And this h pawn is rolling, and the king is cut off. This is great for black. So Brandon Clark is trying to keep his team afloat, but it's I took the a pawn first. Okay, I'll take the h pawn next. It's still doing very well. So let's switch over to Timur. He's got a lot of pawns, but he's also about to lose his bishop on e7. So he's trying to make use of these outside pawns, but I think white is coming first. Just king f8 and then move the rook over to a7, for instance.
Yeah, he's either going to win the pawns on the queen side or have some promoting chances. Either way, the black king is going to be stuck.
Yep, pawn e6 was good enough as well, but he went rook to b7. The e pawn's going, the d pawn is passed. It's just, yeah, this is great. Love it. So this is winning for Zhu Zhongyu, who's had a tremendous season. Oh, wait a second.
Yeah,
uh-oh.
If black is able to keep the exchange and get back the d6 pawn, then it's going to start being difficult for white to win this.
When you say difficult, you mean technical, and that's just, it won't be fun.
Yeah, technical is the right word here.
But now, wow, that's a big blunder. That's why I was saying e6 right away, because here, your rook protects the e pawn, and now you're throwing a very simple rook f7 check, and your pawn starts going to promotion. So instead of getting promoted, you lose this pawn, and rook to b5, knight c6. Okay, rook c5 here.
Right. You're playing very well with the technical moves, very precise.
You know, you have to. And unfortunately,
yeah, that's what you need in these kinds of endgames.
Unfortunately, f5's coming down with check. Right, check to the king, take away the a pawn. Now this is very bad. What black would need to be able to do is play like a move like b3 and start trying to push these pawns down. Because sometimes 2 pawns could beat a rook, but not in this position. So rook takes. Okay, take the a
and
pawn
Timur is also under 10 seconds, so white is going to be able to comfortably squeeze him out here.
By the way, Nihua won, so I'm going to show everyone the end of that game.
All right.
Instead of taking on g2, he doubled his rooks in the g file and put rook g4 and rook h4 and just checkmated the guy. So look at this. Resignation, king f2 is met by queen takes, g2 check, and winning the queen on b2. So beautiful game by Nihua. Probably also, I've been saying candidate for game of the week. Definitely up there. Wait, how is Black still alive in the Timor game? Okay, rook g8 here. End this. End this madness.
He is ending it.
Ooh, nice move, 95.
Yeah, good.
F4, game over. Boom.
He tried. He had his last breath. And White just cut it off right there.
Game over. So Chengdu reaches 8 points, which means they win the match, which means that my 2 predictions from this side of the bracket between Chengdu and St. Louis, I'm correct with my final 4 picks. And
well, congratulations. Your fantasy teams are doing well.
Yeah, and Brandon Clark here with the black pieces, he's winning. He's up a pawn in a rook end game against Chu Ruotong. So let's see how the other game between Yu Yangyi is going. 2750 rated Yu Yangyi, offering a queen exchange. And what happens here? If we start trading queens on c5, the white king runs over, but the black king runs over. Oop, not to h6, this way. Oh, too much to calculate. So let's go back to the other game.
You're just going to run away from this one.
I'll get back to it, but this game should be over quite soon because h and g pawns run fast. King to g6 right now is just easy. You support your pawns. Okay, king h6 is even better. That way you escape any checks along the g file, and Brandon Clark wins.
And he just won by resignation, so good job for Brandon Clark.
So his performance is like a million this season, but unfortunately, it's a little bit too little and a little bit too late. And Yu Yangyi and Alexei Sarana are the final game of the quarterfinals of the Pro Chess League. So I'm going to look in the Twitch chat, thank our over 14,500 users right now. Wow, just incredible. JC Sill 86 says Hess and Alex are the only reason I'm still awake. That's a huge humongous compliment.
You guys are also the reason why we're awake right now, at least for Hess. It's later on the East Coast.
That's true. It's almost midnight. And I'm kind of hungry, not going to lie. But there's still chess going on, still chess being played. And we're the 5th most viewed channel on Twitch right now. So thank you everybody for tuning in and watching this really epic Pro Chess League quarterfinal matchups.
Yeah, and if you think this is epic, you guys should definitely tune into the quarterfinals. We're going to see a lot of good teams. Ljubljana, Armenia, St. Louis, and Chengdu. So we have the finalists now. That's exciting.
Absolutely. And people should be looking up those places because I know, don't lie to me, viewers, you don't know where Ljubljana is. You don't know where, well, you might know where Chengdu is, but you don't know exactly where it is.
They should.
They don't know exactly where it is. So get your geography lessons going.
Maybe if they had to pinpoint it exactly on a map, that would be tricky.
Yeah, but speaking of tricky, as I try to get back to the chess, the match is officially over in terms of the win for Chengdu, but we have one game left between Yu Yangyi, the number, 11 player in the world, give or take a couple of spots, versus Alexei Sarana, a rising talent from Russia. And here this move g4 has been played. So what's the idea? The idea is that this c-pawn is a pass pawn, but if I'm going to put in green for a second, it can be used as a decoy. And Danny loves these moments where I get all instructional, but let's say I just trade a lot.
Bring out the endgame technique here.
Let's say we trade a lot on this square here. This king has quick access to the e4 square, so king d3, king f5, king here, and then you have to count. I take c5, you take e3, you go for the g pawn, I go for the a pawn. I did that very poorly, but I think black is quicker because how advanced the g pawn is. So we see takes. I think he might have captured with the wrong pawn, and the reason why I like capturing with the f pawn is if you go, oh, he did capture with the f pawn, and he went e4.
Yeah, he did.
So I just say don't capture the h pawn. Hope your opponent plays f4, losing immediately, because if you look how spread out the passed pawns are. The king runs over, let's say, and then you put h4. And unfortunately for white, you can't catch both c and g pawns.
Right. So I used to have a Romanian coach, and he would call this the hag's teeth because there would be a huge space in the middle. So ways.
Yeah, I guess I've never heard that expression before, but that's an interesting one.
The translation is probably pretty weird, as with most translations.
Yeah, now h4 might still win, right? We were talking about this h4 pawn split idea. Right. h4 might be right now, let's see, it takes g3, e5, c4, e6. Oh, dude, I don't want to calculate this. I think it's winning.
Yeah, I'm looking at your analysis board since I'm not moving the pieces on mine.
Yeah,
it's a lot easier to calculate it when you're moving all the pawns.
Yeah, he did go h4. Wow. Okay, so I did something right. f4. What was f4? No, f4 can't be right. You have to push your pawn as quickly as possible. All right, so it looks like Yu Yang Yi is going to win this one.
Yeah.
So king f2. Yep, king f2, h6.
That's an endgame to save, you guys. If you're working on your endgames, go to Chess.com, save this game, try to figure it out as black.
Yeah, I'm going to use this for my students because queen with check.
Great.
Boom. Wow. Wow,
Beautifully done by the Pandas.
Wow, seriously, that was an epic finale. I mean, we already had the match decided, but how can you not like...
Yu Yang Yi is a killer in endgames.
Yeah, he's just kind of the man, honestly. Like, what a performance.
Just overall.
So with that, I'm going to try to get the most updated bracket here. But as you see, St. Louis wins 10-6 over Minnesota. I'll bring up some of these player cards again because it's important to see who these players are. They're the ones making the good moves. I'm the one making the bad suggestions. So, and Alexandra,
you're making the good analysis.
Yeah, I appreciate it, but
I'm going to get that trending, I promise.
So this is the winning lineup for St. Louis. This was the losing lineup for Minnesota. Midtkoff was strong, but not strong enough as he lost to the mighty Forrest Chen. And Chengdu, the winners, with this lineup, in particular, 2750 Yu Yang Yi, Nihua 2675, Zhu Zhongyu 2550 thereabout in rising. I believe that he's actually gained rating points recently and he's young. And for Ruotong Chu, she's young, she's rising, she's I believe 100 points higher rated than she's been when they started the calculations for the league. And the losers, unfortunately, a really beloved team, Australians. You have Alexei Sarana, Anton Smirnov, who looks like he's 6.5 in the photo of him used here, but I believe he's about 15, 16 years old. Very talented. Keep an eye on him. Timur Koibakarov, who's played exceptionally well all season for the Kangaroos. Unfortunately, with him and Brandon Clark manning the bottom two boards, it just could not happen for them because Chengdu was too mighty. So let's pull up this bracket one last time. I'm actually going to...
Yeah, there's more under 18 players here than I think there are over. So that's a young talent we've been talking about throughout this match.
Yeah, and well, this is the final four right here. Armenia tied Mumbai 8-8, but they get the win on the tiebreakers, number 1 seed. Ljubljana Turtles, they upset the Snowballs, the 1 seed, then they upset the Migraines, the 2 seed. So they're kind of your trendy upset.
Ljubljana are the biggest underdogs going into the semifinals.
Yeah, Chengdu won 9-7, and they have the win. So the final four are highlighted there: Chengdu, St. Louis, Ljubljana, Armenia. They'll be meeting live in San Francisco. Alexandra, you will be there. I will be there.
You will be there. Danny will be there. Anna will be there. And hopefully a lot of you guys watching will somehow make your way over to SF.
Yes, April 7th, April 8th. Be there or sit at home and watch from your computer. But it will be a lot of fun there as well. So Alexandra, I'll bring us back on camera here for a second. How do we wrap up this performance by not only St. Louis and Chengdu, but Ljubljana and... well, I'm drawing a blank right now. It's past.
I think with just appreciation for all of the players who made it this far, who have been playing the Pro Chess League every week, and for all of you guys who have been watching and helping online chess, become a lot more exciting.
Yeah, and actually, something interesting about Armenia is I believe the president of Armenia is like the vice president of the Chess Federation or the president of the Chess Federation.
Oh, really? Oh, one of my coworkers actually went back to Armenia because he was invited by the president. So.
That's kind of awesome.
Just a fun fact.
So Armenian President Sargsyan is also the president of Armenia, the country, and also the president of the Chess Federation, which is unbelievable to see. They have a great chess in the schools program in Armenia. They have a great leadership, in promoting chess. They have players like Levan Aronian, who may be struggling in the candidates, but his compatriots have led the Armenian Eagles into the Final Four.
Yes.
So I want to thank our 14,000 plus viewers on Twitch. We're one of the most watched streams on Twitch.com, Twitch.tv.
Yeah, we might not have Battle Royale, but we have some interesting rapid chess, so we're glad you guys are here.
I'm glad everyone tuned in. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure covering the regular season and up to the quarterfinals of the Pro Chess League playoffs. And I would be remiss not to thank everyone who's been a part of this. Greg Shoddy as commissioner, Chess.com staff, between Michael Pennywork, who makes the production happen, Marina, who makes a lot of the graphics. You have to thank all the other commentators, between David Pruist, Ben Feingold, Anna Rudolph. Who am I missing? Simon Williams, Jesse Cry, Danny Wrench. Can't not thank him, Irina Crush, Lawrence Trent, everyone who's been a part of the Pro Chess League. And also, last but not least, and actually, of most importance, are the players. They've all given their hearts out to week in and week out, trying to put out the most formidable lineups. Some have suffered heartbreaking defeats, but others have lifted not just their teams, but their countries. In the case of teams like Australia, they've really done a great job promoting chess in that country. And I think this league, it's maybe a rapid format, but as an international audience, and you see some great talents from these various countries. And of course, Alexandra, I have to thank you for sticking with me here, being by my side, providing great insights, and being the best co-commentator that I could ask for. So thank you.
I had a lot of fun listening to your analysis. You did great commentary. So for complimenting, I'll throw that right back.
Yeah, and someone just asked me to prom, so this is hilarious.
Yeah, I think you could still go to prom. You have a couple of years left.
All right. Well, I'll think about it. Get in touch with me. We'll see if I can make that happen. But really, thank you everybody of the 14,000 plus for tuning in. And please don't forget, April 7th, April 8th, those are the dates that you should keep your calendar free for. It's a weekend, so don't give me you're working unless you are working, in which case I'm sorry. But you should be there either in person in San Francisco or the Fall Street.
While you're working, just hide that tab.
Yeah, exactly. Have that tab open. So people are joking. Hess 2020. Oh, now everybody's in there. So someone's asking me to their brother's wedding. This is great.
You're going to be so popular after the stream. It's great.
I couldn't be popular without you. So thank you for being part of this journey with me here. We've seen the finale. I think we should probably start signing off. I just want to thank once more. I really can't thank the viewers on twitch.tv enough, for tuning in, for being with us, for learning. I mean, that's the biggest thing here is the Pro Chess League is about the great players who are already strong and know chess, but also for all of you for tuning in for analysis and getting better. So with that, I hope there's basketball on. I'm hungry. I want to eat. It's 12:01. I don't even know what to do in the new day here, but thank you. And with that, Alexandra, any final words? I've done a lot of talking in the last couple of minutes.
I think you took all my words. That was beautifully said, Hess.
Well, you know what? I try to do my best. I'm trying to close off the show and on a good note. And so, everybody, Final Four, April 7th, April 8th, semis, finals, Pro Chess League. Look it up on prochessleague.com, chess.com. You can't miss it. And with that, I bid everyone a great night, a great morning, and, well, happy chessing.
Thanks, everybody.
And go to the Chess Bras. As I sign off, the Chess Bras will be taking over. Everyone have a great night.